Raz. A teraz? Trzeba było włączyć. Dzień dobry Państwu.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to our official part. We saw each other yesterday. This is the official part with lectures, with specialists.
A czemu ja siebie słyszę?
Żeby było śmieszniej.
Już teraz jest ok, mam nadzieję. Dzisiaj drugi dzień.
This is the second day, the most important day. Yesterday we were integrating, talking, and today this is the content-related part, starting with a lecture by Kacper Ruciński and Kuba Tomczyk, our volunteers from SMA Foundation. Then we will have a new cycle, a meeting. We will be talking about what happened last year from the perspective of ourselves. We will be talking to representatives of different groups, and it's going to be a sum up of how we lived with SMA last year. We will have meetings, conversations about diagnoses, about emotions, so hope you will enjoy it. And please remember that these are our patients and their families, so bear with them. They are very stressed. My daughter is presenting as well, and I guess I'm more stressed out than her. At 11:30, you're all invited in front of the building because we want to take a picture. And most likely, when we start doing it, you will realize where exactly we are going to do this. At 12, a lecture that we are all waiting for, new molecules, therapies, and studies. So what medicine has in offer for us. For reasons that are independent of us, this lecture was supposed to be carried out by Professor Bełciska. Unfortunately, this changed, and the presenter will be Kacper Ruciński. So after the picture, please join us. At 12:30, we will have a panel where we are going to find out what's going to happen with SMA world, Q&A session as well. So we can find out what's going to happen, ask about things we don't know, and listen to what the experts have to say. At 2, we will have lunch at the restaurant with your badge. And then after lunch at 4, we will break into 4 rooms with workshops. And you can look at the agenda, which is available online and at the reception. We will finish at 7, but we also have an agenda for children. So the mouse has arrived, and the session for children has started. Volunteers are available, so you can leave your children with the volunteers. This is a good moment to leave your child with the volunteer because they already want to do it. So the mouse that will take care of the children will be available until lunch. And also children with badges can collect points. There is a game for them. And then we will have a music show, Mozart group musicians, that will take place in the room downstairs, -1. And then we will have a dog therapy presentation. So if you wanted to see what's available for children, this is this yellow agenda. And you can also approach volunteers who will guide you to the right place with your children.
Ja tylko dodam, że wolontariusze
So
to
let me
mają
add that
pomarańczowe
volunteers
koszulki
have
na
orange
napisem
shirts
wolontariusz. Możecie ich
with
wybrać.
the information volunteer. And before lunch, the attractions are available in front of the hotel,
Serdecznie zapraszamy.
so feel free to
Zapraszamy
join.
Kacpra i Kuba i
So,
dziękujemy
Kacper and Kuba,
za
over to you.
spotkanie
Thank you for being with us. This is the 11th time in the row. So, this is the lecture from the world of SMA.
Dziękuję, Dorota. Dziękuję. Witam Państwa. Bardzo się cieszę, że jesteście tutaj na sali.
Thank you guys for being here in this room.
Kuba zaraz
Kuba will join me shortly.
Dobrze ponad 100 rodzin. Także
We have more than 100 families, so glad to have you here in the room. I don't know what's happening with the other families because the room should be packed. It's a conference to which we invited.
Dorota, wiesz, możesz...
Dorota,
Masz jakiś pomysł, co z tym zrobić?
do you know what to do about it?
Nie tak wygląda.
The comments by Dorota were off the mic, sorry.
Sobie w ogródku i pić piwo. Dobra. No to cóż, zaczynamy dla tych, którzy naprawdę są zainteresowani.
Okay, so to those of you who are interested, let us make the presentation for you. Kuba has joined the team a year ago, more than a year ago.
Kuba zajmuje się tematami
He deals with international affairs, just like myself.
w świecie, w szerokim świecie
So
w temacie SMA.
we investigate what's happening in the area of SMA globally. Kuba, over to you.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jakub Tomczyk, and I am a PhD, but not a PhD of. I'm not a medical doctor, but it's a PhD in mathematics, which does help me
Dokładnie to, co się dzieje.
analyze the situation thoroughly.
Zaczniemy od takiego bardzo krótkiego
We will start with a short review
postępów i nowych
of progress and new things in therapies. A lot has been going on in Poland this past year, but we will focus on what's happening outside Poland
to, co
and
nie jest na horyzoncie.
on what's on the horizon, potentially.
Gdzieś tutaj powinien być. Właśnie. Więc zaczniemy od terapii genowych.
We'll start with gene therapies.
Terapie genowe
Gene therapies
oczywiście
are not yet complete. There is one approved therapy, gene therapy, but there are a lot of research projects in the pipeline or in progress to improve gene therapies. One that is a very promising project, still before clinical trials.
takie rozwiązanie, tak zwana druga
It's the so-called
generacja terapii genowych.
second generation gene therapy called CAN203.
W modelu na myszach ta terapia
In mice model, the therapy turned out to be better and more long-lasting than traditional gene therapy,
niestety musimy jeszcze
but we need to wait for it still.
aplikacja o badania kliniczne
So
jest oczekiwana pod koniec.
the application for clinical studies will be submitted at the end of next year, but the work is in progress
Sposób leczenia SMA
to make sure this SMA gene therapy is available.
a kolejną rzeczą, którą
And the next thing I wanted to share with you
fakt, jak bardzo istotny jest prześwietlenie,
is how important screening is, how important it is to administer drugs quickly.
jest przypadek
So there is a case described
w literaturze
in literature
o badaniu w 33
where
tygodniu
in week 33 of life, the drug was administered to twins. The mother of those girls realized in week 30 that something was wrong.
testy wykonano omniopunkcję, testy
So prenatal tests revealed SMA,
te dziewczynki
and
przyszły na świat
these girls were born in week 33, and right after they were delivered, they received gene therapy. And what is absolutely incredible is
te dziewczynki
that these girls
miały tak zwane SMA 0.
had SMA 0, and usually it's related to very few SMN2 copies. In this case, they had only one copy. But the fact that gene therapy was administered really quickly means that these girls are walking today, although the prognosis for children with SMA 0 are not the best. But the speed of administration meant that gene therapy really changed the course of the disease.
To prawdopodobnie tyczy się większości terapii.
And this applies probably to most therapies.
Jeżeli chodzi o risdiplam,
Risdiplam.
również obserwujemy wiele zmian.
Here too, we can see a lot of changes.
Prawdopodobnie oczekiwanych
One of the expected changes is extending the scope of registration. Because, just to give you an example, right now in Europe, the scope of risdiplam is for people from second month of age, but in the United States, and it happened last year, the scope was extended to all children from day one. So we know that in fall this year, probably in Europe, Roche will submit an application to extend their registration. So probably soon we will be able to administer risdiplam from day one in Europe. Now, another potential change on the horizon concerning risdiplam. Well, we know that clinical studies for risdiplam in the form of tablets have been completed. We don't know the outcomes yet, but as far as we know, in the nearest future, risdiplam will be administered in tablets, which means that having a fridge and all the related inconveniences will be avoided. Oh, it's going to be an alternative if someone wants to take advantage of it. Spinraza, Kacper will say more about it. The work is ongoing on new generation of Spinraza, which, according to the models, will have higher efficacy and will be administered less frequently. Clinical studies are ongoing. Kacper will say more about that. And one more thing related to that drug is that there is an advanced cooperation between Alkylon Therapeutics and Biogen on a new administration form. The new administration form is based on a port, an implant that results in the fact that you don't have to use a needle. So Spinraza will be administered through the port. So it's going to be more direct administration, more precise. We can't share any pictures yet because this is still not available in public, but we can confirm that we saw the device and there is work. This is work in progress. So molecules, Kacper Ruciński will say more about them. And here are several other issues that I wanted to mention. There's a lot of progress in diagnostics, and Dr. Goss will be on the panel, and she can answer your questions concerning SMA diagnostics. But I wanted to explain or mention one thing, namely, now it's possible to use prenatal SMA diagnostics based only on a mother's blood sample and father's blood sample. So it's possible to carry out non-invasive prenatal diagnostics. This test is available in UK right now, while the test implements a technology that was developed in 2016, and now it is used commercially in commercial laboratories. So diagnostics also makes progress.
Teraz
There's
chciałbym
also
opowiedzieć
progress in
nieco
diagnostics.
o tym, co
And
się
now let me
dzieje
tell you
w ramach organizacji, która
about
nazywa się SMA Europe.
SMA Europe and what they are doing. SMA Foundation
roku.
has been member of SMA Europe from 2014. But what is SMA Europe? It's an umbrella organization.
Zrzesza ponad
It unites more than 20 patient organizations in Europe from different countries operating towards improvement of the situation of SMA community. So it's a platform of sorts for collaboration
aby poprawiać sytuację w zakresie przesiewu.
aimed at improving the situation, so faster availability of treatments, screening tests, and so on. So this organization has a lot of projects that I wanted to talk to you about. We, as member of this organization, we're also involved in the projects.
Takim pierwszym flagowym
So the first flagship project is called TESMA, or DISMA, or the SMA. You can see the website of the project,
Ten projekt ma na celu
and it's aimed at mapping, listing
obecnego postępu
the current progress
zagrożenie przesiewu i
with regard to screening tests, different types of treatment in different countries.
ten projekt pozwala na śledzenie
So this project allows you to track in real time
jeżeli chodzi o
the progress with regard to availability of treatment and screening.
Głównym celem oczywiście jest wiele możliwości, jak można wykorzystać.
So you can take advantage of this project in numerous ways. For example, if a given country does not offer a given treatment, you can use this information to quickly find a location with potential treatment.
Ten projekt ma też za zadanie, aby
And it's also aimed at showing the regulators,
zdrowia w różnych
ministries of health in Europe, how much still has to be done.
sytuacjach tutaj w Polsce jest
Our situation in Poland is perfect compared to the situation in other locations, but in other countries, screening is still
nowym na przykład.
something new. It's still not implemented everywhere. Also, availability of treatment, treatment is limited. So this project focuses on that. It tracks available therapies and collects statistics based on which you can exercise pressure on the regulators.
Kolejnym
And
flagowym
another flagship project,
Smart Horizon.
Smart Horizon.
To jest projekt, który zebrał kilka organizacji.
It involves several organizations.
Jego wdrożenia. Mamy tutaj, za tym projektem stoi Fundame.
So Fundame is a Spanish foundation, SMA Europe, the umbrella organization, and SMA Foundation from the United States. Those three are implementing this project. And the project focuses on alternative SMA solutions.
Mamy jak gdyby terapię modyfikującą.
Because we have modifying therapies, but there are other technologies that can support life and treatment of people with SMA. So we have exoskeletons and such solutions that support the life of people with SMA.
Kolejnym takim
And another very important project involves clinical trials and treatment readiness in Europe.
współpracować z centrami
This project involves cooperation with medical centers to prepare them
ośrodkami, w których
to become centers which run clinical trials. So doctors and whole doctor teams should be well prepared for the needs of people with SMA as well as challenges that clinical trials involve.
jakie te wyzwania, że tak powiem, istnieją.
So to address the challenges that are out there.
Kolejnym flagowym projektem jest
Another flagship project is the NDS Alliance. And I should say that this project is very popular and very fruitful too, because it helps introduce screening to a number of new countries. This is the current map of screenings, green countries. So basically, the vast majority of Europe has already started to use screening, but there are still many countries that are lagging behind. But we see that over the past 12 months, many countries, being under pressure of other countries in Europe, start introducing screening and see positive results.
Kolejnym tutaj projektem jest SMA Daily Life Study. Tutaj zachęcam
Another project is SMA Daily Life Study. Like, I encourage everyone who is over 16 years of age and speaks English to get on this website and join this project, join this study. This study is basically geared to track your health status and to track your barriers, like architectural barriers that you may come across in your daily life. And this project is to better illustrate and identify the needs of people who live with SMA. So this is an ongoing effort, so please log into this website and check what's going on.
Kolejnym projektem jest w ramach SMA Europe jest projekt, który
Another project, which is under the umbrella of SMA Europe, is the project that tries to put together the most important things for our community. We know very well that there are 3 therapies that are available, but we are just at the beginning of this journey. The therapies, they obviously help tremendously if they are administered right after the screening, but we know that the SMA community is highly diversified. And this particular study is again taking a closer look at the current situation of people who live with SMA, what therapies are available, what is the current situation, with focus on 10 most important things that deserve most of our energy. So this is what I have prepared for you today in terms of the update. Right now, we are going to have another session, which is dedicated to the past year. So here we need Marysia, who will be helping moderate this session, and the speakers for the session. And we will also speak more about the new therapies, about clinical trials, about the pipeline that is out there. And this is during the session that we start at 12, so at noon, right after the family photo. So whoever is interested in the future, please join us at 12 o'clock. But now we are actually taking the step into the past.
Ja zapraszam serdecznie naszych.
Let me invite the participants of this panel.
Kto? Emi na fotelu? Nie na wózku? Chce się przesiąść. To musimy poprosić o fotel. Kto to nam załatwi? To poczekajcie, jeden fotel. Poprosimy pana. Jeden fotel jednak. Emil chce się przesiąść. Poprosimy jeden fotel. Tutaj, w to miejsce. W to. Poczekajcie chwilę. Tomek, odpal tego, co tam napisałem. Taki większy. Bez. Jeszcze.
Żeby przynieść fotel, to mam się do innej sali, mogę dać krzesło jakieś, czy to fotel niekoniecznie jest?
Fotel. Musimy chwilę poczekać. Bo nie ma fotelu. Weź Kuba jeszcze te mikrofony.
Tak, ale to zdjąć?
To zdjąć chyba. Ja wiem, co to znaczy.
Bo Emila to nie wiedzieć.
To idę. Weź sobie tylko krzesło i wyszło. Co, zaczynamy.
Okay, ready to go. Good morning, everyone.
Serdecznie
Let me welcome
na panelu dyskusyjnym moim
at
minionym
the
roku.
discussion panel that is about the
Do
past,
udziału w panelu
my past year,
rodziny
and
chorych na SMA.
we invited SMA patients' families and patients themselves to sit on the panel. My name is Maria Koźmińska-Brygoła, and Jakub Tomczyk is my name, and both of us will
Oboje jesteśmy
moderate the discussion with our panelists. We are both volunteers for SMA Foundation.
Jeżeli chodzi o cel,
Now,
spotykamy się tutaj, mamy...
what is the purpose of this panel? Well, first of all, we would like to thank the panelists for volunteering to be on the panel. The purpose of this exercise is twofold.
Jak bardzo
First of all, we want to show that there is a very broad spectrum within our SMA community, and that entails highly diversified needs and expectations of the community members, not because of the broad age representation, but also because of the progression of the disease. And the other
pokazać
goal that we have in mind is to invite the audience to ask questions
osoby, które są podobne.
so that you can see for yourself that there are people like you sitting on this panel and taking charge. Well, it seems that during the times when all the therapies are available for SMA patients, given in the time when we have screening, you may start thinking that SMA is fading away, but this is not a case. And ourselves as families, because all of us are families, every day we struggle and we fight against SMA. And regardless regardless of where you are, when you got the diagnosis and what is the specific type of the SMA that you're facing, nevertheless, SMA determines the lives of our families every day. So here we are sharing pictures of our members and their families.
Przejdziemy do takiego bardzo krótkiego zaprezentowania
So
uczestników.
let me first very briefly introduce the panelists, and then we will continue with the discussion. And we want to encourage you to ask questions. So we are going to prove to you that there is no coincidence that we all gather here. So let me start with a very short round of introduction. And to give you also a better context, SMA context. So let me start with Marysia. My name is Maria. I am a mom. My son Antek, 9 years ago, 8 years ago, he was diagnosed SMA1. He's on Spinraza, and he's been on Risdiplam for the past 2 years. And this is Tosia. Tosia is my daughter, and the reason why I'm here, Tosia was diagnosed during the screening that was introduced in Poland. And screening was introduced because of your efforts. And currently, Tosia is treated with Risdiplam. And we started the therapy when she was 3 months of age. And this is myself. My name is Martyna, and I'm here with Sławek and Leo. And I think that Leo is sleeping right now. Leo is 1 year old, and he is a screening baby. So he owes that to foundation. This is why we are here. And he is symptomless. He has 4 copies, and he is on the oral therapy. Later on, we will be talking about that at the greater length. My name is Magdalena. I have a 4-year-old Marysia who has SMA1. In this picture, we still have a father. Marysia has symptoms. She was diagnosed in week 3. Unfortunately, her symptoms were manifested a few hours after the birth, so she had poor prognosis. From the age of 6 weeks, she's been on Spinraza, and so far she has taken 15 doses. My name is Emilia. And I've been taking Spinraza for 4 years. I was diagnosed when I was nearly 2 years old. And let me add to that when you look at the pictures, I think that you have no doubts who's going to be a co-star for Tom Cruise during the next Mission Impossible movie. My name is Olga. I have 4 kids, and 2 of them have SMA. Antek is the oldest, is 13 years old, and he has SMA1. He was diagnosed when he was a few years old, and Jasmine is the youngest one. Antek is on Spinraza, 19 doses. Jasmina was qualified for the gene therapy within the clinical studies setting. My name is Marzena. I'm 45 years old. Since my birth, I had CMA. From 2020, I've been taking Spinraza. My name is Justyna Szmytka. I am the mom of Zosia. Zosia has SMA1. She was diagnosed when she was 6 weeks old. When she was 5 months old, she qualified for the gene therapy under clinical trial in Belgium on 9th of May 1919, so right before it was approved for the European market. Gosia Bończak mom of Szymon, SMA1, 18 years old. Szymon was diagnosed when he was 4 months old. Initially, he was on Spinraza, and for the past 2.5 years, he has been taking Ridisplan. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. So let us reflect over the past year. Let me invite you to share your experience of the last year. What was important for you in your daily life? Where your thoughts were and feelings were gravitating? I'm sure that it was related to SMA. Martyna got the diagnosis last year, so let me start with Martyna.
Halo, okej. Mam bardzo dużo do powiedzenia.
I have so much to say, but I'm going to say something else that I initially planned to say.
No bo my jesteśmy właśnie tą rodziną,
Because we are the family
my to nazywamy, ma takie niewidzialne potrzeby.
that has, as we say, invisible needs. So we are invisible patients. Leo is ill, but this is not visible. Kuba was showing the program, and people who live various assistive technologies. I think that very soon we will have to come up with another infographics that would show patients without such assistive technologies, because Leo will most likely not need them. So that was important to us. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm stage fright. Well, after the diagnosis, we didn't know that, and we found out everything, not everything, but many things, because of the foundation. So this is what I really want to say. Because the last year was to a large extent determined by volunteers from the foundation who worked with us. So we are a walking, hopefully, sort of advertising and publicity for SMA Foundation. Therefore, I'm so happy that I'm here. Last year, I was scared to join. I was scared to meet all of you. And today, I feel like at home. And this is weird because we don't really know each other. So this sort of signal is showing me that I should stop. Okay, so let me continue, because there are 3 things. First of all, that we are a walking publicity for your work and efforts, and we are very grateful, and we want to thank you. I don't have the right words to express our gratitude. I don't know how many screening families are here, or children that had no symptoms. Anyone? No, no one. Okay, Kuba had a screening baby too. So Kuba and myself, we represent the families that have invisible needs. And this is something that will become more and more frequent, because we are living up to the challenge that is hard to explain to our friends and families. It's even for us hard to understand. We don't really fully know our needs, and we don't know what the future holds for Leo. And to give you a better insight into it, we are perceived as a lucky family. But when we are amongst the healthy families, they look at us as like the guys who had bad luck. So it's really hard to decide where you belong. And I think that we belong here and there. And this is a major emotional and psychological and mental work that we have to do to somehow identify our proper identity and align ourselves with it. And finally, the last thing that I wanted to say, the third thing that I have, is that it is crucial and critical to offer treatment even if symptoms are not manifested, because it turns out that with 4 copies, the treatment is not available. And if you have no symptoms, we just didn't accept that. We had a different plan how to approach that. But I wanted to tell you that this movement that is just starting for the oral treatment, that should be also available to children that do not show symptoms before symptoms manifest themselves. And for that was really a critical thing for Leo and for ourselves as parents. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let me add to those 4 copies. This is a very specific case. Some 15% of children born have 4 copies, and the symptoms appear slightly later, but still they do appear, and they are difficult to diagnose because of more lenient course. And the number of copies is very dynamic. A year ago, the best centers in the world that told parents with 4 copies that you need to observe. But in Germany, there is a study where 20 kids were observed, 20 kids with 4 copies, and the kids that were not in treatment, in 50% of them, symptoms occurred. In spite of they were continuously monitored, it wasn't possible to level out or get rid of symptoms. So now the recommendation is to treat 4 copies rather than observe. And the situation changes, and I hope availability of drugs will also change. Magdalena and Kuba, thank you for your remarks. Yes, I, as a mother of an older 4-year-old child, let me tell you what's changed over the past year. Marysia's condition has become stable, especially with regard to respiratory tract. She went through infections much better, and there was no need for hospitalization, and this year was really good. She coped better with coughing, so we can see the outcomes of 4-year treatment, and she's made a lot of progress in terms of movement. I said that the diagnosis was very early. It was like 8 or 9 hours after delivery. The baby wasn't moving. She was only moving a little bit with her hands. So a suspicion of SMA, diagnosis, and quick administration of drug. And now we have a child that walks holding hands. She takes a few independent steps as well. So this is really incredible. And last year has shown that even if progress is smaller, it's still in place, and we can see reinforcement, improvement when it comes to different skills. So these are the things that have impact on her independence, and she can do more independently by herself. She can grab a book, she can grab something that's interesting to her. She doesn't need help and assistance in everything she does. So it's really phenomenal. And this brought us to the decision that she should go to kindergarten, because we also postponed this decision for a long time. And an aspect that makes our life harder at all times and puts Marysia at risk are problems with swallowing, big problems. In spite of treatment, and it's still a problem. She's doing better now, because there was time when she was not controlling saliva. We had to use suction all the time. But now the disease has progressed, and the current treatment seems insufficient. So we are a family waiting for access to oral treatment. We don't have this access. Even though the drug is in Poland, our child doesn't meet the criteria. She has no problems with the spine, so she does not qualify for oral drug, but we still have hope. We hope that maybe oral drug could change her comfort of living and safety. This is what I'm talking about. It's really hard for us to make her independent of us. And yes, presence of a caregiver in kindergarten might not be enough. Maybe as our assistant of cough later, maybe it will be necessary. So this is the other part that appears in the title, hope. Our hope is access to other drugs in the future that may recover the functions that the disease has impacted very strongly. And we are happy about what we have. We are grateful. If it wasn't for fast diagnosis, fast initiation of treatment, we wouldn't be here. Our baby, our child wouldn't be here. So now we can brag with progress and we can advertise this treatment, if I might put it this way, because it's nice to look at. And so a lot of gratefulness, a lot of positive changes, but also hopes for something more, more safety. This is how we see it.
Dziękuję.
Thank you.
Myślę, że bardzo miło jest popatrzeć na dziecko tak wcześnie.
I think it's nice to look at a child that was diagnosed so early, that was so weak, and that is now, yes, walking. Yes, yesterday at the ball, she was walking all the time. She was very tired at the end of the day. Well, but anyway, she's able to stand much more physically today. So these are the changes that you can see. And at the same time, you still have difficulties that make it impossible for you to be independent.
Bardzo dziękuję.
And to go to kindergarten. Emmy, our dear representative of youth, thank you so much for being with us.
Emi, zapraszamy.
So, just a few words. What was this year? What did you face?
Plany na najbliższy czas.
And what are your plans for the nearest future? Yes, this year I went to high school. I wanted to go to a normal high school, not a high school for children with special needs. I never liked the fact that the disabled children are always put in one group. So even if I don't need help, on the one hand, they would put me to a class, well, you know. And such high schools offer a lower level of education, and in the future, I simply want to be a psychiatrist. So I opted for a regular school. Emi, tell us, what about the availability? Because often you use a wheelchair, you go on a wheelchair to school. Was it easy to be in a school that is adapted? It was hard. Because in our city there are several high schools. One is integrational high school for children with special needs, and others are not adapted. How did you solve the problem? Because there's a story behind it. Well, 2 years ago, one high school agreed to install a ramp. And the school had a very positive ranking, so I decided to check it out. And it turns out it was one of the best choices. It's really cool. But I also have a great class. So this school has 2 stories, and I'm able to use the ramp and get to all of the classes on both stories, on both floors. Events that are often organized at the gym, which with steps. So what about it? But I have this cool class, and they simply carry me through the steps. So I get up, they move me, they move the wheelchair, and it's good. Recently, I was on an excursion in Warsaw without any assistance, only with our class, and we were taking a bus. But there was a team for putting my wheelchair and a team for putting me inside the bus, and it was very efficient indeed. And we also visited the Polish parliament. There were steps, so simply they supported me. They helped me. Emi, you told us before this panel about your plans for the future. more distant future. And the question is whether it's doable. Do you want to share it?
Mam nadzieję, że jest to, bo
I hope it's doable because I wanted to, as I told you, I wanted to be a psychiatrist. Emmy asks, what do you think? Can you be a psychiatrist, a doctor, when you have SMA? And I think today you can do everything when you have SMA if you want to.
Życzymy Ci tego, Emi.
So this is our
Naszych sukcesów.
wish for you. We wish you every sport success. So you ski, you dive, you jump with a parachute.
Jesteś dla nas
So to us, you are an example to be followed. A lot of grown-ups, healthy people would probably not have the courage. So congratulations.
dziękuję.
Ja zastanawiając się nad tym, co
Well,
mam powiedzieć,
I was wondering what I should say, and I had a million of thoughts in my head.
U nas ostatni rok
Well,
to takie były
last year
dwie rzeczy. Na pewno
involved two things. First of all, Antek stabilization. After 19 doses of Spinraza, he is now an old one, but in spite of starting treatment at a later stage, Spinraza does work.
to jest dziecko, które
And
się nie
it's a
choruje.
child which is never sick. So last time I gave him antibiotic was 7 years ago. So when it comes to respiratory tract, things are great. And that's on the positive note. What we've been facing on a day-to-day basis is education, unfortunately. Children in Antek's condition, so continuous fight with the system, with school. There is the law, but everything is on paper. So
Duże pole do pracy,
still, a lot
do zmian.
has to be done. A lot has to change to make sure education of children with disabilities, wise, intelligent children who have their passions, well, to make sure that this education is better,
Dla rodzica.
that it's easier for parents.
Ja jako mama
I, as a mother,
w ostatnim roku już doszłam do takiego etapu, właśnie dzięki tej takiej troszkę stabilizacji, że sobie
I saw stabilization last year in my child, and that's why last year I understood that it's time to take care of myself, to stop thinking only about the children and their needs,
zająć się sobą już.
and deal with myself instead. Because, yes, I'm at this age where I have pain in the back, painful hands, so I can see this very big need.
Powiedzieć głośno,
I can of psychotherapy. Let me say it out loud.
tego czego
So
myślę, że tutaj jak masz, pamiętam, mama Leona, Martyna.
I think, Martyna, I don't know whether you had support of a psychologist right after diagnosis. Sorry, we couldn't hear the comment without the mic, the answer without the mic. So this is what shocked me from the very beginning of diagnosis, that parents hear the diagnosis, it falls on you like a bomb, and then the doctor runs away. And there is no referral. There is no program in the system that would allow you to be referred to a psychologist. And there is no system. There are no tools where parents get some support. After 13 years, since my child was diagnosed, I know that this should be available from the very beginning. Support for parents, and also as a mother, I simply forgot about myself. Parents have to take care of themselves to be able to take care of children. So take care of my spine, my health, my back. So respite care is really important. And I am hoping that one day, sooner or later, it will be possible. It's very important. We have no problem leaving leaving Antek with caregivers, no problem, but there's no such possibility. Privately, it costs a lot of money. So Yaśmina, the situation was different because Yaśmina was very sick And
etapie, że staramy się
right
o
now,
połączenie,
we are trying to include her in Manatee. She's on gene therapy, and 5 years have passed, and we got a recommendation in New York
żeby jednak spróbować
that we should
dać jej
try
ponieważ nie ma
risdiplam.
możliwości włączenia jej
It's not possible to include her in the drug program bypassing Spinraza. We opted for a drug program, which is called Manatee, and this is my dream.
Bo jakbym miała możliwość obserwacji
If I could
w Stanach
look at clinical trials in the United States, how it's organized.
naszym lekarzom,
So I wish our doctors, and I met a lot of them, they are really good in Poland. They want to run clinical studies, but they don't have the background. So they don't have support. They have so much work that it's really hard for them to do anything about clinical studies. In Poland, it's really hard. The parents want to have it, doctors want to have it, but it's impossible because doctors have their duties. On top of that, clinical studies, plus the red tape. Our professor in New York has 3 assistants who are not doctors, who are dealing with all the paperwork. They make appointments, they respond to emails. In our case, it's always doctors who do that. And I would like us to go in this direction, to professionalize clinical trials. Everybody would benefit, and doctors would only have to do what they learned their whole life to do, namely they would only deal with medical things, while other people who can do the paperwork, pick up phones, so assistants, office workers, they should do the rest. And then parents would feel better, doctors would feel better because they wouldn't lose time on unnecessary things that are cumbersome, that take a lot of time, and it would all benefit patients and science. Thank you for your precious observations. And now Marzena. Yes, to describe last year, actually this was a continuation of my work throughout all the previous years. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm a very active person. From 2007 onwards, I've been working every day. I am commuting to work independently. And because of lack of care, I live in a social shelter, but I'm still involved in a daily life in the community. Through all those years of commuting, I've been working in the labor office where I work, and yes, I work at the information point for the disabled, and for several years I've also been supporting disabled people and other unemployed. Apart from this work, I am also active on numerous other areas, not only last year, but I've been simply trying out new things, discovering new things. Now, one of my accomplishments is that I was a volunteer in a foundation where I visited families, looked for donors for those poorer families, and I have been a volunteer as well for several years. I'm a donor organizing parcels for families. So I do shopping, I deliver those parcels. So when it comes to other activities, I have been appointed in the Social Council for the Disabled. This is my second term of office, and I support the disabled in Mikołowski County. And my passions from 2018, I've been in training, which is called precise orientation. This is a sports discipline where you don't exclude people with muscle atrophy. You need an able mind for this discipline, and everybody can train it who's able to speak. So I do recommend it because there are a lot of excursions, also championships abroad. For example, I went to Portugal, among others, as a national representative, and I've already been to Lithuania, also near Warsaw. I was involved in competitions, so apart from competing, I'm also able to do some sightseeing and see new areas.
I may say that I am fairly self-sufficient and independent. The only thing that I would need is reliable assistant so that I can live an independent life and have an independent household.
Bardzo dziękujemy.
Thank you.
I też gratuluję tak bogatego życia.
And congratulations on everything that you do. This is really very impressive.
Mówiłaś o pracy.
Now, you talked a lot about your work. You work in the county or labor office, and you deal with employment of people with disabilities. So, what is your experience in terms of employment of people with disabilities in Poland? I believe that work is like a fundamental thing in the life of each adult. So, what is it like for people with disabilities in Poland? I think that it's better than it used to be. When you have an employer who's really open to the idea of hiring a person with a disability, the employer is not really that much preoccupied with the type of the disability. It's just a matter if the person is able to do the work. However, there are still many, many people with disabilities who cannot find employment. Let's be honest about it. Most employers would like to have people with disabilities with some comorbidities so that the employer gets additional funding to cover employment costs. And many times the employers do not really look at the qualifications that the person brings. And many people with disabilities continue to educate themselves to be the best prepared for the job. Okay, let's move on to Justyna. Hello. I will start with something that I didn't want to talk about, but Olga really inspired me. We come back to Poland from Belgium 3 years ago because Zosia is not having a treatment in Poland. We are not part of the drug program, therefore we don't have our own physician. They don't know what to do with us. We don't have any tests in Poland, and this is a major problem for us because we do have appointments in Belgium. Now it's a reduced frequency once a year, but we would like to actually have some physicians who will be responsible for us. And they offer Spinraza here in Poland, but our doctors in Belgium say that they cannot guarantee that Spinraza will bring in any additional benefits. Neostatin is a different story. So we would like to get enrolled into the clinical trial. So we are waiting for the clinical trial that would accept Zosia. And during the past year, Zosia started her preschool, and we are very happy. Her preschool teacher has recently really praised Zosia, saying that she learned so much, and we can tell that she made a huge social progress. The problem that we see is that Zosia has no assistant, because the assistant is only available for for children who have a conjunction of disabilities, and Zosia has just single disability, motor disability, but she's not eligible. There is a assistant teacher at preschool, but the assistant teacher is for all the children with disabilities, and there are 5 of them. And Zosia is not able to get on the carpet in the wheelchair because she doesn't have enough strength in her arms. So she needs to be helped. And I can tell that the preschool teacher assistant, who's a lovely person, she spends a lot of time with Zosia, but other children also need her attention. So I actually addressed this problem, and I went to the local government, to the city hall, saying that we would like to have an assistant for Zosia at the preschool. So we are waiting for their response, but I'm hopeful, because they were calling the preschool for an interview to see if there is a child that needs additional support. Our preschool teacher was supporting and vouching for us, so I hope that we will get the assistant. And another thing is that Zosia is growing, she's getting heavier. Recently, we bought an electric wheelchair, and the next phase is a car that would be able to accommodate the wheelchair. And obviously, such vans are twice as expensive as regular cars. Fortunately, in this case, the government is helping out. We do have a program where we can apply that is supporting independence and mobility. But why this support is not available to everyone who needs it? I think that even 50% of people who will apply will not be able to get the co-funding, and on top of it, you need to have your own down payment. You need to have your own down payment. So probably people who are able to come up with a down payment, which is quite sizable, are applying for that form of financial assistance. So, I could take on additional employment, additional job to be able to save for the down payment. But since I receive the nursing benefit because I take care of my child, I cannot work. I cannot have any additional income. Last year, I joined the foundation. So all the time I'm here, I'm trying to help as much as I can. No, it's not as much as she can. She is actually helping quite a lot. And she is actually helping in a very difficult manner. Namely, when the war in Ukraine started, she started to support Ukrainian families in Poland. And let me add to that she seems to be such a quiet person, but she has tremendous power and she brings a lot of linguistic skills to the table. And you need to have a lot of strength to help the families from Ukraine who are in such a precarious and difficult situation. So this is not, it's just to make it very clear, but this is not a tiny thing. So now when Zosia is in the preschool, I do have time to get engaged. So I could actually have additional, could take a part-time job to chip in and to contribute to the family budget. But the legislation prevents me from doing so. Okay, that we talked about it. We talked about this particular topic even before the panel. I think that one of the most important difficulties for our community is, this thing. So let me add to that. Our children or adults with SMA are not sort of sick enough, which is really a paradox. This is something that we actually came across. We were told SMA, fine, but what is the symptom? We will treat you once we know the symptoms. So Leo is not ill enough. And to be eligible for various fine types of assistance, you need to have a higher progression of the disease. If you don't have a progressing disease, you're not eligible for support. So again, this is something that we should really focus on. We should fight for the revision of the legislation so that we are not penalized additionally for that. I think that it would be great if all of us could live until the time when all these programs are broadly available to everyone. Justyna, anything else from you? Thank you. Thank you. And now over to Małgosia. Małgosia is well familiar to all of us because Małgosia has been with us for a long time. And yesterday we recognized Małgosia for being with us for such a long time. And it's not that she's just attending the conferences. Let me just emphasize that Małgosia is always attending and she's always vigilant and she's always ready to share her tremendous knowledge and experience. Look, I don't want to repeat things that have already been said, and I'm the last one with the microphone, so I have a privilege that I can tell all these problems are well known to me. In terms of the daily life, yes, we do take advantage of the therapy. Szymon is getting stronger, so now we were scared to really leave home, even when we wanted to go to the next town. We were not able really to do it. And recently we came back from the tour of Europe, and Szymon was fine. And tonight he's still going to the national stadium for the boxing show. So what you get out of the therapy is tremendous. Now, another personal thing is that Szymon is 18. Obviously, we are much older, so our back, our spine, our bones are speaking to us. They tell us, you cannot carry him because in 2 years you will not be able to lift yourself. So this is what I'm kind of afraid of. You don't have that much physical strength, and you have to care for an adult, and you are not eligible for any assistance. And Szymon is about to be 18, and Szymon would like to be independent. But in this country, you don't have a system that will support people with such disabilities to be independent. And on top of it, another thing is that we are not going to live forever. And I think that each parent that has a child with disability has this concern. What happens with my child when we are gone, or when we have no more stamina to care for him or her? So this is the personal thing. Now let me talk about more general things. There are many veterans here. Perhaps this is not a good word because it's kind of divides us into those who have been there for a long time and those who have been diagnosed recently. But you remember, I'm talking to the veterans. When you were finding out about the disease, the doctor's communication would be like, you cannot do anything about it, go home. And as of last year, we have 3 therapy lines that are eligible for reimbursement, plus screening, which gives us a tremendous opportunity, because in a few years, if you have a child born with SMA will not have a natural course, but it will be modified. So you would have either people that show no symptoms or would have very mild symptoms, but one way or the other, they will continue to have SMA. So Look, there are no miraculous therapies. All these therapies are new. Remember that Spiraza was approved back in 2016. It's been just 7 years. We don't know what's going to happen in 5, 10, or 15 years. So my personal wish is that there are free therapies that are available, but I would really try to improve the quality of the drug program because it may happen at some point that you may need to switch from one therapy to another. And again, my dream is that this is not the national payer that is making decision whether you should take this drug or another, depending on how curved your spine is. I think that the doctor, supported with and consulting the parents, should make the choice of the therapy so that the therapy works best for the patient. And sometimes you can switch from one therapy line to another. And sometimes you can stop responding to a new therapy and you have to go back to Spinraza. And I would like to make sure that in the future we have this possibility, because then we really can have a freedom to be treated to the best effect. We do have instruments available, but there are some restrictions for access. So this is my appeal. I will be always supporting such actions. Let's try to fine-tune the drug program. So let me follow up on Gosia's words. I mentioned that this is what we are really trying to cope with Jasmine, our youngest one. She has 2 copies, so she was like a type 1. Just like Antek, she qualified for the gene therapy prior to symptoms. Well, some of the symptoms developed anyway, and we are in a weird situation. She's the first baby in Poland who's after the gene therapy, so she's in the longest follow-up period so far. There is no benchmark, so there is no point of reference. She is a point of reference for all the other children that went through the gene therapy. And doctors in Poland do not really know what to do with her because she is able to acquire a lot of skills. Recently, she learned how to jump, but since she was growing, other skills deteriorated, like walking up the stairs or getting up. But she's better going downstairs. So, one thing gets worse because she's growing, and then another thing is improving. So we do have a recommendation to start taking every so RISD plan. But I have mixed feelings. As Leon's mom said, we do have experience with Antec. We are aware of what SMA is like. I would like to have the chance to start a second therapy because the observation time and efficacy of Zolgensma is fairly short, and pharmaceutical company like Novartis said that 7.5 years is fine, but they don't check the facts that are important for the caregiver. So the child was sitting. The child got the gene therapy, and the child still sits. But I have contact with parents who were actually taking the syrup after the gene therapy, saying, yes, the child is still sitting, but for 3 hours instead of 1 hour. And now the child eats the meal for 15 minutes, not half an hour. For the pharma company, it doesn't matter because the skill is still there. But for us as parents, this is a huge difference. As Gosia said, with treatment, Szymon has more stamina, more strength. And I see the same in my son. So I would like to give Ridisplam to Jasmina because I don't know what's going to happen next. All these things are so new. We don't know if she's going to improve or she's going to deteriorate. So I would like to have this opportunity. I would like to be able to start the second therapy to keep her safe, to actually be more forward-looking, not to wait for the symptoms, because when the symptom is here, it is the final outcome of the motor neurons dying. So if you see the symptom, it means that some motor neurons have already been killed. So there is no point in waiting. You have to actually prevent that. I think that Gosia and Olga summarized our deliberations very gracefully. And once again, I would like to thank all the speakers for joining us on the panel, for sharing their developments for the past year and their plans and desires. So applause for all the panelists. We still have time for one or two questions from the audience. If someone has a question, I will walk up to you quickly with a microphone. So anyone from the audience? And obviously, I encourage you to speak one-on-one to our panelists. Well, thank you very much for this candid conversation and for the emotions that came with it. And I think that we were able to show that we come in many different colors, that our needs are very diversified. Our successes may be very different too. So let's remember about it. And we also wanted to touch upon the more difficult things, because as the foundation, we need your honest suggestions, your inputs, so that you guide and inform our actions and projects. We do have a lot of ideas on our own, but we need you to actually see whether our ideas go in the right way and what we should focus on. So right now, we want to invite you to our family photo, the family photo of our multicolor family. So Dorota, would you explain how we are going to go about it? Once again, thank you. And again, a huge round of applause for this courage. So now it's time for the photo opportunity. This is our tradition. The photo will be taken the same place where we had the race for children. So right behind the parking lot, there is like a grassy area where we have just 30 minutes to take the picture. And we know that it usually takes long before we are able to get together and get ready for the photo. So at 12 we come back here and we are going to discuss new molecules.
Robiliśmy się. Gratuluję. To było bardzo
Fundacją w 2013 roku właśnie na tym pierwszym zjeździe rodzin. Tam poznaliśmy założycieli fundacji. Następnie 3 lata temu zaangażowałam się w pomoc jako wolontariusz Fundacji SMA. Jestem mamą Emilki, która choruje na rdzeniowy zanik mięśni. Wiem, jak ważne jest, żeby wspierać nasze rodziny, naszych chorych, jak ważne są takie spotkania warsztatowe, ważne są spotkania z specjalistami, ważna jest opieka koordynowana, ważny jest kontakt.
Chciałam pomóc członkom fundacji, dlatego że fundacja pomaga innym rodzinom. Oprócz tego, że sama mam chore dziecko, chciałam zrobić coś też dla innych. Fundacja to robi i chciałam ich wesprzeć w tych działaniach.
Moje działanie wzięło się jakoś tak naturalnie, z takiego poczucia, że jeżeli jest jakiś problem, a ewidentnie problemem była sytuacja ludzi chorych na SMA, w moim kontekście głównie dzieci, prawda? Jak się dowiedziałam, że moje dziecko choruje na SMA, no to siłą rzeczy pomyślałam, że trzeba coś w tym kierunku robić i że razem można zrobić więcej.
Działam w fundacji na pewno dlatego, że mam chore dziecko i chciałabym, żeby żyło mu się jak najlepiej, zarówno pod tym względem fizycznym, jak i chciałabym zadbać o ten aspekt jego życia społecznego, jego komfortu życia, jego jakości życia.
Odbieram telefony od nowo zdiagnozowanych rodzin, staram się ich wesprzeć w tym najtrudniejszym czasie, którym jest początek życia z SMA. Rodzice też otrzymując od nas informację, że my też jesteśmy w takim trudnej sytuacji albo że byliśmy, bardziej mogą nam zaufać. Rozmowy często są długie i bardzo emocjonujące, rodziny są na początku drogi, więc są bardzo pogubione.
Jestem wolontariuszem Fundacji SMA. Okazało się, że córka jest chora na SMA. Dostaliśmy dużo pomocy od fundacji na samym początku. Chciałem zrobić coś dobrego i dlatego wieczorami siadam do fundacji.
Do fundacji weszłam w 2016 roku, bo zauważyłam, że choroba, z którą się zmagamy, jest w Polsce mało znana i jest bardzo wiele do zrobienia, żeby moje dziecko miało takie szanse jak jego rówieśnicy.
Jestem mamą prawie 3-letniej Tosi, która ma SMA 1. Opiekę nad córką i grafiki, które robiłam dla fundacji, to w zasadzie trzeba zrobić pomiędzy wszystkimi innymi zajęciami, także nieraz to jest tak, że stoję nad patelnią i się kotlet przepala, a coś mi nie wychodzi i muszę coś szybko odesłać, także jest ciężko nieraz.
Wtedy, kiedy trzeba, kiedy kiedyś po prostu pojawia jakaś nagła potrzeba, ja odkładałem inne rzeczy i po prostu to robiłem, niespecjalnie planując czy zastanawiając się, jak to się wpisuje w harmonogram mojego czasu.
W fundacji pełnię funkcję koordynatora projektów. Są to bardzo różnorodne projekty, ale głównie zależy mi na takich działaniach, które wspierają integrację społeczności chorych na SMA, a także społeczności opiekunów chorych na SMA, zjazdach dla mam i ojców chorych na SMA, czy też warsztaty dla fizjoterapeutów, które też są zawsze okazją do spotkania zarówno specjalistów, jak i rodzin.
Obszarami, które są dla mnie szczególnie interesujące i się w nich spełniam, to te z zakresu polityki lekowej i szeroko rozumianej opieki medycznej. Bardzo walczę o standardy opieki w SMA w Polskiej Służbie Zdrowia. Też widzę wiele wyzwań, które myślę, że są do realizacji w obszarze edukacji.
Fundacja SMA to jest fundacja, którą tworzą ludzie głównie związani rodzinnie z chorobą, czyli ja jestem mamą chorego dziecka, niektórzy są tak jak ja rodzicami, niektórzy są chorymi. Robimy to jako społeczność, wierząc, że po prostu połączone nasze siły mogą przynieść korzyści dla całego środowiska.
Wszyscy przeszliśmy przez to samo, przez tą samą traumę, przez te same etapy godzenia się z chorobą. Teraz w dobie leczenia wydaje się to łatwiejsze, ale no niestety leczenie to nie wszystko. Musimy tutaj zająć się kilkoma elementami opieki nad dzieckiem, a potem dorosłym chorym na rdzeniowy zanik mięśni. Trzeba zwrócić uwagę na różne elementy, jak fizjoterapia, odżywianie, oddychanie, sprawy ortopedyczne, opieka ortopedyczna.
To, co udało nam się zdziałać w społeczeństwie, w środowisku, z całej Fundacji SMA, to jest po prostu niesamowite, bo mam wrażenie, że Fundacja nie rozumie słowa nie da się, nie zrobimy. Tutaj jest takie działanie, wszyscy się tak nakręcają, są tak pozytywnym zespołem, tak pozytywnymi ludźmi, że no, nie ma słowa nie da się.
To nie jest praca jednej osoby, nikt nie działa w próżni w fundacji, zawsze to jest zespół, także mi się wydaje, że to, co osiągnęliśmy, to jest bezprecedensowe.
Bardzo dużo zmieniło się na przestrzeni czasu, dużo więcej osób uczestniczy w konferencjach, dużo projektów nowych jest prowadzonych z fundacji, wsparcia dla osób z SMA.
Dzięki fundacji wiele się zmieniło, przede wszystkim świadomość społeczna, świadomość o chorobie. Dzięki temu i nam jest łatwiej żyć w społeczeństwie i społeczeństwo bardziej rozumie to, co się dzieje.
Ja dotychczas się nauczyłam, że tutaj po prostu nie ma rzeczy niemożliwych i małymi kroczkami, codzienną pracą możemy zdziałać bardzo dużo i polepszyć jakość życia wszystkich chorych, a tym samym mojego dziecka i mojej rodziny.
Teraz sytuacja, kiedy leczenie jest, kiedy wiemy, co to jest za choroba, wiemy, jak przebiega, wiemy, co możemy zrobić, żeby dzieciom pomóc, żeby dorosłym pomóc. Teraz mamy fantastyczną społeczność, na nasze zjazdy coroczne przyjeżdżają setki, naprawdę setki rodzin z SMA.
Jestem bardzo zadowolona, że mogę być w fundacji. Poznałam tylu fantastycznych ludzi.
Mam takie wewnętrzne przekonanie, że faktycznie jest tak, że jedna osoba czy też parę osób są w stanie realnie zmieniać świat.
I dlatego im więcej osób się zaangażuje w różne działania, nawet takie drobne jakieś, drobną pomoc, która wydawałaby się jest mniej istotna, to ona pomaga po prostu realizować te duże cele.
Każdy z nas może wnieść bardzo dużo do takiej organizacji jak Fundacja SMA. Możemy wspólnie tworzyć rzeczywistość, bazując na naszym potencjale rodziców, czy dziadków, czy też chorych dorosłych. Każdy z nas ma swoje spojrzenie i wspólnie możemy kreować tą rzeczywistość, możemy zmieniać rzeczywistość chorych na SMA. Serdecznie zapraszam wszystkich do współpracy, ponieważ jest to niesamowita przygoda, okazja do poznania rodzin, okazja do wyjazdów, okazja do też znalezienia pewnego sensu. Wspólnie jest na pewno łatwiej w tej sytuacji, w której się znaleźliśmy.
Wierzymy w to, że można z rdzeniowym zanikiem mięśni żyć szczęśliwie, można żyć godnie, można pracować, można się uczyć. I my, jako fundacja zrzeszająca chorych na rdzeniowy zanik mięśni, staramy się w tym pomóc.
Gotta get down to get up again. You gotta get up to get down, kid. You gotta get down to get up again. You gotta get up to get down, kid. Hey, you gotta get down to get up again.
So hopefully this is going to be a nice memory. We will start the lecture on new molecules in a moment. We are still waiting. All of the lectures are recorded and interpreted into 2 languages, so it's all available on our YouTube channel. Now, live, but you're all invited to come back live. The volunteers are trying to make sure that as many of you as possible come back. So it would be great if you came back. The lecture takes some 30 minutes. Then we have a meeting with experts. The professors, Professor Kotulska will be available online. She had an injury, she suffered an injury and had a surgery. So we will have Professor Goss, who is specialized in genetics, and Madam Stępień will join us in the second part of the meeting and then at 2 there's lunch at the restaurant. After lunch, other meetings, workshops. A star is born. Yes, and there are quite a lot of attractions for children. There are problems with cars, so if you parked on the first parking, please move your car because it will be more convenient for all of us. There's the third parking space, parking opened, so you can move your cars.
Zapytaj. Z uwagami. Wiecie, ja tu mogę długo mówić, ale program leci. Przypominam o pokojach. Jeżeli ktoś jeszcze się nie wymeldował, a nie zostaje do jutra, to bardzo prosimy. Na recepcji jest dostępna lista. O, widzę panów. Wymeldowani? Byliście na liście. I to jest najtrudniejsza część konferencji. Może już ściągniemy tą planszę, że zapraszamy na zdjęcie, bo jeszcze ktoś, może jeszcze idą zamiast tu do nas, to zdjęcie jest już zrobione. To nam się udało. Ja jeszcze może tutaj opowiem, co będzie się działo po wykładzie Kacpra.
So let me tell you what's going to happen after Kacper's lecture. We will have a debate, a hybrid debate, Q&A session with our experts. So you can ask your questions. So the world of SMA and its future. The first stage of this debate is Professor Laurent Silva, who is going to talk about the future of treatment in SMA. It is interpreted, so you don't need the headsets. It is, translated 10 minutes with subtitles, and then we will talk about drug program and treating SMA in Poland. We will talk about ongoing clinical trials and Professor Katarzyna Kotulska-Jóźwiak, and then we will have Professor Monika Goss. She's going to talk about the results of early diagnostics in SMA and about the screening program for newborns. And we invited Agnieszka Stępień as well, Professor Agnieszka Stępień, to talk to us about physical therapy in SMA, how important physical therapy is, where we are going. And I myself will try to talk to you about the quality of life of patients with SMA, how things change, and what are the needs that have not been satisfied yet. And then you can ask questions to the experts. I don't think we will be waiting any longer. Kacper. So we have interpretation into 2 languages on YouTube. We are available live.
Brawa dla Kacpra.
Bravo for Kacper. Not yet, please. The presentation is not ready yet. So, presentation, and this was supposed to be delivered by Professor Mazurkiewicz-Brudzińska. Unfortunately, Madam Professor wasn't able to attend this conference for reasons independent of her. So I am going to talk to you about what's happening with pharmacological treatment of SMA and the different drugs. So SMA is treated not only pharmacologically, physical therapy is also very important, equipment is very important, psychological aspect is important, diet, feeding. But I am going to focus on drugs. So where are we? There are 3 drugs available, and you know more or less what they look like and how they are called when they were implemented. This is a cheat sheet. If you forgot, we have intrathecal drug implemented very early, used in all patients with SMA, can be used, no limitations here. So it's used as a drug of choice. We also have risdiplam, risd, used orally, second-line treatment drug in Poland. In many other countries, it's up to the patient or up to the doctor. It has its limitations. It can be used in patients who meets quite specific criteria. So all those who have early type of SMA, which are early symptoms, or those who have SMA type 2 or 3, up to 4 SMN2 gene copies, or up to 4 copies. No, sorry. Again, risdiplam can be used above 2 months of age in patients with SMA symptoms, or those who have up to 4 copies of SMN2 gene. Gene therapy, Zolgensma, implemented recently, very much advanced drug, and advanced therapy drug, gene therapy, administered by means of infusion. The infusion takes an hour and can be used in the EU. Also in Poland, up to 21 kilograms of body mass. It can be used in patients who have SMA type 1, or if another type or pre-symptomatic, not more than 3 copies of SMN2 gene. These criteria are controversial. In most countries of the world, there are no such criteria. The drug can be used in all patients up to 2 years of age. In Poland, reimbursement scope is very narrow. This drug is only used in children up to 6 months of age who went through a newborn screening in Poland. And this reimbursement scope is related to the application submitted by the producer to the ministry. And another slide. Please. Which of those 3 drugs is more efficacious? Right now, a clinical trial is ongoing in Italy where doctors are trying to determine which drug works. How? They try to define biomarkers, substances in the organism that could be indicative of a response, and they want to work out AI algorithm to forecast which of those 3 drugs should be used in which patient. Another scientific project, and may I have the next click, please, is a pharmacoeconomic analysis carried out by the British agency that deals with pharmacoeconomic analysis. Nice. And it compares nusinersen and risdiplam. And we should receive recommendations at the end of this year or at the beginning of the next one. New forms of known drugs. Some scientific efforts go towards checking how known drugs can be administered in a more convenient way, a more efficacious way. So we have the first nusinersen study with higher dose, started in 2019. It's called DEVOTE. And they test administration of drug with a different dosing regimen to saturating doses 4 times higher than the current doses, and maintaining doses every 4 months, also higher to 88 milligrams. There's a mistake here, 28 milligrams. And the study is quite complicated. It's not the right time to discuss it. You will find more information about it on our website, and the trial will be completed in 2024. We will hopefully have more data then, which will tell us whether such dosing offers more safety and is more efficacious. In Poland, Gdańsk and Warsaw are running this trial. And risdiplam, the trial checks whether in the form of a tablet, which you can use sublingually or diluted in liquid, whether it can be used to replace standard dose of risdiplam. The study has been completed, and we are waiting for an application by the producer for marketing approval. And we will know until the end of this year whether risdiplam can be administered in the form of tablets. And now two new categories of experimental molecules, two new categories of drugs worked out for treating SMA. The first one, the first molecule, or the first category involves molecules aimed at reinforcing muscles, generally speaking, rebuilding and development of muscle tissue. Myostatin inhibitors. Myostatin is a substance which is generated by the organism, and it's aimed at stopping division of muscle cells. Muscle cells divide, and if there were no inhibition, the muscles would grow and grow endlessly. So that's why there is this substance which inhibits that. Myostatin inhibitors are aimed at suppressing this substance, and they are supposed to stimulate muscle cells to divide and multiply, so they can have more muscle fibers. One molecule is apitegromab, and data presented to me show that this is a very promising molecule. Patients had a very big response to treatment. Don't quote me on that, but the improvement was like 10 points on Hammersmith scale. I don't know if it's possible at all, but improvement of 8 to 10 points, well, that's what some data are saying. Data are not published yet, so we'll see when they are going to be published and verified by other scientists. They may differ. In Poland, this study is carried out in 3 hospitals. In December 2024, or even earlier, in mid-next year, we should have preliminary data telling us whether this is an efficacious molecule. This is not phase 3 study. It is phase 3 study. So after the completion of this study, applications will be submitted for marketing authorization for registration of this molecule, assuming that there will be no problems with safety or efficacy. Now, another molecule, Manatee study, well known in Poland. A lot of parents talk about it. This is a Roche molecule, and this is a clinical study checking whether it improves the strength of muscles in combination with risdiplam. And there are 2 arms. Two parts. Part 1 is ongoing. Part 2 is more interesting. 144 patients will be enrolled, divided into 2 groups. One group will receive risdiplam and R07204239, and the other one will receive risdiplam and placebo. And these 2 groups, if I remember correctly, will be followed up for 12 months, and the outcomes will be compared to see whether the drug changes the course of the disease compared to using risdiplam only.
The study is open in a very few countries. In Poland, we have Gdańsk, Poznań, and Warsaw. And let me say that at this point, we have children between 2 and 10 years of age, but the study will be extended to include older patients, older than 10 years. And it would be always ambulant or sitting patients. And the study is complicated in case of children that are not able to sit because there is no sufficient muscle tissue. Another molecule is taldewgrobep alpha, very strange name, but it was first developed for Duchenne dystrophy. Roche was doing clinical trials, but it failed. The molecule did not have efficacy as expected. It turned out that it was not the issue with the molecule, but it turned out that steroids affect efficacy, and steroids are standard treatment for Duchenne dystrophy. And for these people, this molecule cannot really work. Someone has not thought about it. Someone has not really prepared that and invested in the trial that didn't work out. Biohaven Pharmaceuticals from the US actually purchased that molecule from Roche, and they decided to run their study for SMA, and they just launched that. The criteria is on the screen. We want to bring this trial to Poland. Hopefully we will succeed, and hopefully they will open this trial in Poland. But at this point in time, we don't really have more news. Another category of medication
Proszę o kolejny slajd, ponieważ pilot nie działa.
Unfortunately, the remote stopped working. Okay, so causal therapies are another options. So now this is interesting. Where to look for if we go beyond the three existing therapies, nusinersen, Spinraza, Zolgensma, and Evrysdi. So here we don't really work with the muscles, but we are trying to work right on the cause. In other words, we want to increase SNA protein. One of them is the new antisense oligonucleotide. It is developed by Biogen, and it's supposed to replace nusinersen at some point. As you know, there are the drugs have exclusivity rights from 6 to 8 months. Now it is suggested that it should not be longer than 7 years. And drug manufacturers try to launch the new product at the moment when exclusivity rights for the previous one expire. So this is an ongoing story for each product. And this is how the science is able to move on, and the medical treatments are getting better. So we have new molecule that is being developed to replace nusinersen. The administration will be less frequent. It will be administered subarachnoidal, but once every 6 months. The clinical trial was launched last year. This is phase 1, so we are just investigating how the molecule works in the organism, how it is metabolized, and how it is accumulated. So this is a very early phase. Other studies are under development, and the protocols are being finalized for them. Now, the next one. Novartis, that produced Zolgensma, is testing the new administration route. So intrathecal administration, and the dose would be 10 times less. And since it would be such a small dose, we wouldn't have side effects or adverse effects that are quite serious for Zolgensma. This is very promising. I'm not sure, but if I remember well, it was back 2018 when they launched the first clinical study. At some point, they put it on hold because they noticed that there is a toxic effect observed in animals. Now they investigated that for 2 years, and then it turned out that this toxic impact does not really affect people. It just affected animals. But the company decided to change the model. So some patients that were actually given the product at the inception of the study, so it was intrathecal administration. We don't have exact numbers, but it was like dozen or so, like probably under 20 patients. So the outcomes are fairly surprising. And I have to say that it was really hard for me to make sense of it because the response varied tremendously. But we know that it can happen with SMA, but the difference did not depend on the dose, and it did not depend on the progression or the age of the patient. Because normally you see that if the patient gets the medication early on, before the disease is able to progress, then we see a much better improvement, and it is visible much faster. And here it was a very ambiguous picture. So we are really looking forward to the next study. At SMA Europe, we are trying to contribute to the development of the protocol. Now, another gene therapy that is now in clinical trials is ENG-004 by BioCAD. This is a Russian company, and the therapy is developed in Russia, but as far as I remember, they work together with the Massachusetts University in the US. So the idea is just like in case of Zolgensma, but the virus envelope was modified so that it doesn't trigger immunological response or reaction that Zolgensma triggers. So the work has been going on for quite a few years, and the clinical trial was ready for launch in 2020, but it was put on hold because of the COVID, and now it was launched in 2023. The name is Bluebell, no control group, and right now it's just Russia. Children are invited, children that are up to 8 months of age are invited to enroll, but during enrollment they should be younger than that. And they accept international patients because in Russia they have children treated with Zolgensma, and they didn't have the local population that would be willing to enroll. But there were people from other countries coming in for the study. Now, another gene therapy that is right now under clinical trials is a very mysterious therapy that we don't know much about. Cradle is a Chinese manufacturer that is doing it, and it should be intravenous treatment, just like for Zolgensma. They published the clinical trial, and there is a handful of information on their website, but not many facts. But basically 2 different doses. This is phase 1. So for the time being, they are testing safety, which means that if this product comes out as a safe option, they will develop phase 2 and phase 3. So the end point is December 2025. So they want to have the long monitoring time. We will try to dig for more information, but this is all that we were able to find out. Now, an interesting chapter now, because this is about the molecules that are in preclinical trial development. I will share one slide. I don't want to steal the show from Cornelia, who's much more knowledgeable about it. So this is the roadmap. This is Cure SMA slide. And this is how they see the preclinical trial development of new molecules for SMA. It's all in English. But you see that we have antisense oligonucleotides, and at the bottom we also have another attempt of the gene therapy. This is not the exhaustive list. There are other initiatives that are out there. I think that Kuba mentioned another project from China, And I know that in the UK, they also have some project that is trying to develop a gene therapy based on a different vector, but this is the overall picture. Unfortunately, we also have failures. Regretfully, there were many failures for SMA. Basically, until 2016, there was nothing but failures. Only 2016 was a breakthrough year. But now, the most recent failed molecules, I called it failures. Perhaps not everything is a failure, but this is what it looks like. Branaplam was the first molecule, and that study was suboptimal. And I am being diplomatic when I'm saying that. So the molecule was developed with the foundation of SMA, with the financing of SMA Foundation. SMA Foundation spent over $150 million for studies. This was all fundraising efforts by parents. We know that some children from Poland participated. Very poor management of this study. But Branaplam really had a very strong response. Children were improving very fast, and it was oral administration once a week. So the company that was doing the study, but they didn't have sensible data because of how they were doing the study, they decided that it's not going in the right way. They are not going to get approval, regulatory approval. So they started to develop it as a Huntington disease product, but it turns out to be toxic. However, Huntington disease affects adults. So the dose was much larger than the dose that was given to children with SMA1. Pyridostigmine is the drug that is used for other neurological diseases. From 2014, Professor Destalge was testing that medication to check if it can improve overall health of SMA patient. The results were not promising. It turned out that some adults reported some improvement. Reldesemtiv is another medication that was supposed to improve the strength of muscles. The clinical study goes many years back. There was some efficacy, and the first outcomes were promising. However, for a number of reasons that I don't really understand, the company decided not to continue the project. Most likely, they didn't have the sponsor who would be willing to invest in that, especially with other molecules that had similar effect were launched at the same time. I think that this is it when it comes to the list. We need to change the slide. Okay, here, as I said, the science is moving on. It's still progressing. So the new molecules are being developed. Scientists get grants to continue their research. As SMA Polish member of SMA Europe, we are also trying to contribute. So if you and your friends make donations to SMA Poland, we share that funding with SMA Europe. So what does the future hold for us? Well, time will tell. We will meet in 1 year, and probably there will be more news to share. Thank you.
Dziękujemy bardzo.
Thank you, Kacper, for the summary. And now it's time for the discussion. Let me invite Katarzyna Pinkosz, who will be moderating our discussion.
I przedstawiła naszych gości.
And she will introduce our speakers and panelists. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Katarzyna Pinkosz. I am a medical journalist, and I publish in Wprost and Świat Lekarza. I covered SMA on some occasions, and I guess this is why I'm here. So let me invite the panelists. Remotely, we will have Professor Katarzyna Kotulska-Jóźwiak, who's in charge of the consultation team for SMA from Neurological and Epidemiological Clinic of Children's Hospital in Warsaw, and Dr. Monika Goss from the Clinic of Genetics from the Institute of the Mother and the Child.
Zapraszam bardzo serdecznie panią doktor
Dr.
o kulturze fizycznej
Agnieszka Stępień, who's the president of the Polish Physiotherapy Association.
I panią Dorotę Raczek,
And
prezes Fundacji
Mrs. Dr. Raczek, who's the president of SMA Foundation.
Czy jest pani profesor już z nami?
Do we have professor online? Yeah, I hope that I'm here. Yes. Hello, everyone. Let me start with apologies up front. First of all, apologies that I am just online, not in person. Now, apologies that I'm going to stay for a short time, but I have personal health challenges. I am actually at the rehabilitation camp right now, so I took a break in my rehabilitation procedure today to have this connection. Therefore, I apologize, but I cannot really stay until the end of the panel. Yes, and this is why we have a small shift in that program, because first we were supposed to have Professor Lawrence Serbe interview that was filmed, but now we will first have a professor who's with us. Kacper was saying a lot about the future of the science and the new therapies that are developed for SMA patients. But first, let me turn to Professor Kotulska-Jóźwiak and ask about the current situation in Poland. As it happens, Poland has one of the best treatment plans in the world. We have the screening for all newborns in Poland from March 2022. We have 3 therapies available. And I would like to ask Professor, what are the outcomes and what are the benefits of all the therapies that are available in Poland? As part of the drug program, but also the patients that are newly diagnosed. So I would like to ask about your experience and about hard data from SMPT system and the data from SMA report that was published last year, end of last year. And that report gives us really hard data. It's not just clinical studies, but it is the real-life actual patient data. I wanted to show you the outcomes in practice, how they can differ from clinical trials. They can differ positively. I prepared the presentation and sent to the organizers. Would you mind showing it? Because I wanted to show you some figures, and I guess they will tell you the most. So if possible, please show my presentation. Yes, we can see it, Madam Professor. Okay, next slide, please. I am going to show you the outcomes that we've already presented together with SMA Foundation. They were published in the report, and we've already, published them. But also I wanted to show you some outcomes that we are preparing, and they will be published. These are our figures concerning the drug program, and each time I show them, they change because the numbers of patients treated under the program change day in, day out. The coordination team is working very smoothly. So most of our applications that we are considering are applications for newly diagnosed patients, and
These are the applications that are decided upon immediately, or applications to switch patient from one therapy to the other. And there is no queue. There are definitely no applications are waiting. Some individual patients in Poland, adult patients, are waiting to be included, but they are just individual people. So in our work, we evaluated 1,250 applications for treatment of SMA, most of them because of the fact that the only available therapy for a while was only nusinersen, but now we have a growing number of applications for the other drug, for the other two drugs. So now we have more than 800 patients in therapy, and this figure changes as well, day in, day out. But the day before yesterday, 16 patients were treated with nusinersen. I can't tell you the exact figures. It's not, they are not fully available for gene therapy, risdiplam, because it's only being developed for risdiplam. It has been developed for risdiplam. For gene therapy, it's not available yet. So I don't really have exact data for risdiplam. For gene therapy, it's easier. Among patients who were diagnosed under screening, so they were included in gene therapy under drug program. There are 16 such children. Now, what I am most happy about, well, it's not about drugs as such, but about the possibility of using treatment very early, so screening for newborns. In this program, well, this program has been fantastic in Poland. Diagnosis is put forward before 2 weeks of age of a child, and it's submitted to the center that is closest to the domicile of the family, which runs the program, and no case of delays have been reported when it comes to the procedure of accepting the patients and starting the therapy. We also have a lot of centers. The number has been growing. We have 18 centers for children, 18 for adults, but these figures have been changing because new centers have been added, especially this applies to centers for adults. We're very happy about it because we have the biggest gaps here. And children, well, some of them will be growing up, and we will be looking for them for the right place in centers for adults. So we have the first results of treatment under the drug program. They have been published, but these are the outcomes concerning the era before the implementation of a screening program. So they apply to symptomatic patients to a large extent, because only for children in that period were children diagnosed before the symptoms. There were children from families where SMA occurred before. So it was not based on screening, but it was based on prenatal study. And in the case of children, we had 300 patients treated for at least a year so that we can analyze the results. But please note that in the majority of cases, we have, in this group of patients, we have patients who have very much advanced symptoms. Half of patients evaluated here started therapy with at least 20 points in the scale. So these are patients included when the disease was very much advanced. And the scale I'm talking about is CHOP intent scale. But despite that, we have patients who have had clear outcomes of treatment. Average change after 14 months in CHOP intent scale was almost 9 points. It's a lot. Because an improvement that you can see with the naked eye is 4 points CHOP intent on a CHOP intent scale. Professor, let me interrupt you. Can we be changing these slides?
Tak, bardzo proszę.
Yes, please. Next slides. Two next slides.
Tak, to następny poproszę. To jest ta prezentacja.
Yes, this is
Za
it.
chwilę będziemy mieli liczby. Następny poproszę. Tutaj mamy
This is a preliminary
wstępny obraz chorych, jak Państwo widzicie, to co mówiłam.
picture,
Bardzo zaawansowany obraz.
very much advanced disease.
Tutaj będą widoczne te zmiany.
And here you can see the changes. After 14 months, almost 9 points on a CHOP intent scale. Quite a big change. Hammersmith scale, it's 6 points. And here I wanted to show you something because I think it's very important. It's the rate of patients who improve after other months, after 6 months in this case. So 48% of patients who improved by at least 4 points. After 10 months, there are 62% of such patients. After 14 months, 76%. This means that it's worth to wait for the improvement. It occurs in time and it can occur after many, many months. And I think it's quite important. So now let me move on to what I promised you. I will show you some data that haven't been published yet. So these are the results for more than 1,000 patients who were enrolled for nusinersen treatment at the very beginning. And again, we have symptomatic patients who are dominant here, but we also have a group of patients who are pre-symptomatic. And here, this is on Hammersmith scale, mainly symptomatic patients, but we also have pre-symptomatic patients here as well. And what I wanted to draw your attention to is that I carried out a comparison of patients who were enrolled for nusinersen treatment, and then we will do it for other 2 drugs, who were born in 2022, so when we already had screening. And in the case of these patients, well, in SMPT, we have 19 such patients. 7 of them were children who already had SMA1 symptoms. So in spite of the fact that they were diagnosed earlier, they already had symptoms. But the remaining ones were patients who were pre-symptomatic, 12 children. And now, symptomatic patients, only 1 of those 7 required ventilation during therapy. Average improvement in this group for patients who are treated a year long, that's 28% on CHOP intent scale. In the clinical study with nusinersen, the improvement was 12 points for SMA1. And we had 12 patients who are pre-symptomatic, and average time for starting treatment was day 18, so earlier than in clinical studies. And in this group, SMA symptoms have not developed. So this means that when we coordinate early diagnostics based on screening tests and early treatment, we can have outcomes that are better than in clinical studies. So this is what I was talking about. These are the results for children who were born in 2022. Next, please.
To jest podsumowanie
And
tego,
this is the
prawda?
sum
Znaczy,
up
wydaje mi
of
się
what I
niezwykle
showed you,
fascynujące,
and
bardzo,
it
bardzo
seems
ciekawe.
fascinating, and I'm very
To
happy to
świadczy
see
o tym,
that,
że
because
jesteśmy w
this
stanie
means
w praktyce
that
klinicznej
in clinical
poprawić
practice we are
to,
able
żebyśmy się
to
spodziewali poprawionego
improve the
efektu.
outcomes
Następne poproszę.
vis-a-vis clinical trials.
I już tak zupełnie
And
podsumowując,
now, summing up,
to bardzo się cieszę, że mamy w
I am
Polsce
truly happy that
nie
in
tylko
Poland
dostęp
we
do
not only have access to treatment,
badań przesiewowych, ale
access
też dostęp
to
do dobrze skoordynowanego
screening
programu
tests,
leczenia,
but
który
also access
oceni
to a
się
well-coordinated
skuteczność,
treatment
oceni
program,
się
which evaluates
bezpieczeństwo,
efficacy,
oceni się wyeliminowanie
safety,
tego programu w
and
międzykliniczny
functioning of
czas,
the program.
kiedy
Among
pacjenci są
others, a
włączani do
time when
leczenia
patients
w
are
Stanach Zjednoczonych, bo to nam daje możliwość
included in the treatment, because this
racjonalnej oceny tego,
gives us the
czego powinno się
possibility of
spodziewać
evaluating what we
w
can expect
przyszłości,
in
jeżeli chodzi o
reality
wyniki leczenia
when it comes
w
to
niepłodnej
the
chirurgii. A zatem możemy
outcomes of SMA treatment.
bardzo
So
prawdziwie i w
we
oparciu o fakty rozmawiać
can
z
use the facts,
rodzicami,
and based on them
rodzinami
talk
pacjentów,
to the
których włączamy do
parents or
mówiących nam tego,
families
czego
of
rzeczywiście
patients who
możemy się
are
w
included
leczeniu
in
spodziewać.
this
Mam
treatment,
nadzieję,
who are
że
offered this treatment.
podobne analizy
So
będą
hopefully similar analysis
odnośnie
can be
do
carried out with regard to
pozostałych
two remaining
kompetencji
drugs, not only nusinersen, but also gene therapy and
No
risdiplam.
i mam nadzieję, że
And
to też
I
będzie
do hope
oręż do
that
tego,
it's
żeby
going
stosować
to be a tool for us a
z
negotiating tool
rozwiązań w przyszłości.
to negotiate with the ministry and with the payer.
Bardzo dziękuję pani profesor.
Thank you
Chciałam
so
zapytać
much,
jeszcze
Madam
o to,
Professor.
ponieważ
I wanted to ask you the following question. It's really positive that the results of real practice is better than outcomes of clinical studies. Did you test also patient satisfaction, whether patients were satisfied with the therapy? And the second question, please tell us about your patients. In your patients, well, do you have any concrete cases of stabilization or improvement?
Znaczy w ramach
Well,
programu
when
lekowego
it
nie
comes to
mamy
the drug
badań
program, we
satysfakcji.
are
Zresztą
not measuring
byłoby to
satisfaction,
bardzo
and such a
trudne.
study would be really
Wszystkie
hard
skale jakości
because all
życia
scales
mamy,
of
jakości
quality of
życia
life
dzieci,
that we have for
są skale
children
bardzo ogólne,
are
ale
very
też odpowiednio
general or
konkretne.
specific for
Jeśli chodzi o choroby
or
neurologiczne,
developed
takie
for
skali
specific
wysokie
diseases.
ryzyko
But when it comes to neuromuscular diseases, there is no questionnaire that would pertain to the expectations to the therapy and that would
zadowolenie
reflect
z postępów
satisfaction with
terapii. To
progress.
jeszcze na dodatek
And on
pokazywało
top of that, that
dane
would show data
możliwe do zastosowania u każdego pacjenta, czyli nie tylko u tych pacjentów, którzy są
regarding every
wykonani do
patient. So
leczenia
not only
wzrokowego,
patients
jeżeli
that are included before symptoms, where parents assess them vis-a-vis healthy peers, but also patients who have very much advanced symptoms. So this spread of clinical symptoms at the time of including into therapy makes it hard to carry out such a study. So pre-symptomatic patients are patients who
to zadowolenie
where and the satisfaction with therapy should be compared with correct normal development of the child. So there are so many impacts or factors that have impact on it that it would be really hard to carry out such satisfaction study. But we are really thinking about doing it, and we are trying to develop a way, for example, to divide patients receiving treatment so that we can use different scales or different questionnaires, or we are looking for a more or less universal tool. We do have a group that deals with it, so I hope we will succeed. Now, when it comes to patients that we treat at our pediatric hospital, and we have a whole team dealing with it, a team of doctors, team of nurses who are putting a lot of heart
dzieci uczestniczące w tym
into
programie jak
making sure that
najlepiej
children who are
z tego
enrolled
leczenia korzystały.
can benefit the
Mamy zespół
treatment.
fizjoterapeutów,
We have a
który
team
też
of
bardzo się
physiotherapists
angażuje
who
zarówno w oceny,
are
jak
very
i
much involved in the assessment
rehabilitacji.
and in
Mamy
rehabilitation.
dietetyka, mamy
We have a
konsultanta
dietitian, we have
gastroenterologów,
consultants,
okulistów,
gastroenterologists,
oczywiście
experts,
specjalistów
rehab
rehabilitacji. Więc to jest
experts.
cały ogromny
So
zespół
this
ludzi,
is a whole team
który w tym uczestniczy
that is
i
involved,
który
and
się bardzo angażuje. Myślę, że
they
to
are
jest chyba
very
odniesienie
much
do każdego
engaged.
szpitala.
And I think
Na
the same
pewno
can be
ośrodki
said of every
dorosłe
hospital.
będą do tego zespołu miały
So
włączoną dużą grupę radiologów,
definitely, in the case of adults, radiologists are
którzy
involved
również uczestniczą w podawaniu leku, jeśli chodzi
because
o
they are involved in administration of
Więc to
the drug.
mogę mówić o
So
naszym wspólnym
I can talk
doświadczeniu.
about
Nasze
our
wspólne
joint
doświadczenie jest takie,
experience.
że
And our
w
joint
zasadzie
experience is that, in
widzimy
fact, we
pacjentów,
do not
którzy są
see
leczeni
patients that
jakąś
would not have
korzyścią.
some kind of
Oczywiście,
benefit.
że ta korzyść
So,
jest
of
inna
course,
w
the
przypadku
benefit
dzieci
is different
najmłodszych,
for youngest children,
które otrzymują
especially
leczenie
those who are
chorobiową.
receiving
Tutaj się
treatment
po prostu cieszymy
pre-symptomatically,
tym, że
because
przychodzi
we
do
are
nas
happy that
pacjent,
we
na
have a
którego
patient
patrzymy jak na
at whom we
zdrowego
look
rówieśnika,
as a healthy
zdrowego niemowlę,
peer, healthy
zdrowego
baby,
małego
healthy newborn.
człowieka. I w zasadzie oczekujemy od
And
niego,
in
że
fact, we
dalej
expect
rozwinie
that this
zdrowie,
baby will develop
będzie miał
normally
dobre zdrowie.
and achieve
I oczywiście ta satysfakcja
milestones,
wtedy jest
and the
najwyższa.
satisfaction is the
Ale mam
greatest
również
here,
satysfakcję z
but we
tego, że
also
pacjent
are
mimo jest bardzo
satisfied that the patient
zaawansowany
who's very much
chorobowo,
advanced
a po raz pierwszy
in terms of
można
the
w ten sam
disease
wrzucić głowę.
can turn its head
Ja zresztą na
by
spotkaniu Fundacji SMA
himself or
mówiłam o
herself.
tym, że te drobne,
So those small,
takie nawet nie ujawniane
minor
funkcjonalnie
things, minor
korzyści
improvements
ruchowe
and benefits, motor benefits,
czasami zupełnie zmieniają
they sometimes
jakość życia,
change
kiedy nie
the
trzeba
quality of life.
wołać
If you don't have to call for the caregiver each time to turn the head which falls from the
to
pillow,
się po prostu
or
odbywa, to jest zupełnie inaczej.
well, it's really things are
Wobec
really
tego
getting better. So
ja osobiście wiem,
I
tacy pacjenci oczywiście
personally
są.
know
Mamy
of such
pacjentów, którzy
patients. We have
rezygnują z
patients
terapii,
who
ona,
quit therapy.
mimo tego, że w liczbach nawet widać poprawę, to
Despite the fact that they can see the improvement in the numbers, but nevertheless the improvement is not as they expected. We do have such cases in the program, but we do not see that amongst children. Thank you, Professor. I think that the data is really optimistic, but one more question. Kacper Ruciński earlier had very interesting lecture about the future of therapies, and he was talking about nusinersen administered very rarely, or in terms of the other product, it would be the oral form instead of IV. So do you see such a chance for the future for the patients that are waiting for it? There are clinical studies going on, and hopefully they will go on smoothly, and hopefully the approval process will also be a smooth process. What we would like to have available is the medication that can be less frequently administered. It is important because SMA patients change the way they think about their disease, especially when you speak to adults. I spoke to Professor Pruszczyk, who said that more and more often she speaks to her patients who want to start families. And then having like a dose administered once a year, perhaps it will be possible in the future, that would really make it feasible to plan a pregnancy. With the current therapies,
są wręcz przeciwwskazane w czasie ciąży.
Well,
albo no,
there are contraindications, and you cannot take them during the pregnancy, or there are concerns that they may not be advisable to take during the pregnancy. So we are really looking forward to such a breakthrough. All of us are looking forward to that. We are also looking forward to the outcomes of the studies that are done on the molecules that would improve the strength of the muscles, because these molecules, two molecules that are under investigation, are the most advanced. And if this really turns out that the molecules would be as efficacious as expected, it would be a good alternative for the patients with symptoms. Thank you. Well, at the end, we were supposed to have Q&A questions, but I know that you need to go soon, Professor. So perhaps I will ask the audience if there is anyone who would like to ask about the drugs or therapies. The professor will be leaving us earlier, therefore we need to ask questions now. Okay, I do not see any questions from the audience. If you have any follow-up questions, you have my email, you have my phone number. Please contact me. I'm trying to answer any questions. Recently, I was kind of focused on my own health issues, but I hope that I will be recovering soon and will be back to work full speed. Thank you, Professor, for joining us. But now we are going back to the video with Professor Laurent Servier. Professor Servier works in the Oxford Center for Neuromuscular Diseases, and he's also a professor with the Liège University. And he will be talking about the therapies that are almost within the reach, and also those that are like 10 or 15 years down the road. So if we may have a video projected on the screen. Unfortunately, we cannot see the video, but it is coming, right? If not, we will show it at the end, but just let us know what's going on.
Chyba coś się zaczyna dziać, także...
Seems it is coming.
A możemy go tutaj widzieć na tym dużym ekranie?
Can we show it on the big screen?
Myślę, że jakieś mamy kłopoty techniczne.
I think that there is some technical glitch.
Prosimy tylko o sygnał, czy mamy
So please let us know if we are supposed to continue or if we can actually...
Kontynuujemy, tak?
Okay, so we will continue the discussion and perhaps we can show the film at the end of the debate. We will be grateful. And apologies, ladies, that I kept you waiting. But let me start with Professor Monika Goss. And my question is about screening. We talked a lot about screening of newborns, and Professor Kotulska-Jóźwiak was also speaking very highly about it. Please give us some data. How many children were screened, and do we have equal distribution across Poland? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I also had some slides prepared. Are we able to show it on the screen?
Mamy slajdy, pani profesor Goss?
Do we have slides that Professor Goss provided?
To ja zacznę może od początku, licząc na to, że w międzyczasie jednak się uda.
Okay, so we do have slides. So let me start. about the screening of newborns for SMA. So it all started in April 2021 in the region of Mazowsze. And step by step, we were rolling it out to other regions of Poland. At the end of March 2022, all the regions were included in the screening program. And all the newborns that were born at that time, nearly all of them, were screened. Why nearly? Because this is the genetic test, and this is something that requires informed consent. And some parents refused or didn't sign the consent form. So we were tracking them back to get the consent, but we were not always successful. However, we have over 99% of newborns who are screened for SMA. We adopted the strategy as it's a usual practice for screening, that we have two tests. The first one is the screen test, and this identifies children that have higher risk of a disease. And during the step 2, we actually run the test that confirms or rules out the result of test number 1. The SMA test is basically very accurate. It doesn't give false positive results. When we were learning how to test, we had one case that was false positive. We thought that the child had SMA, and after we verified that using another test method, it turned out that there was some interference that caused the false positive result. But now we are well familiar with the test. We don't doubt the results. If we have doubts, then we verify by applying another testing method. Now, 2 years and 2 months, and altogether 515,000 newborns screened. Per year, we have 305,000 children born, and we had 76 diagnoses. So what happens when we have positive diagnosis? The positive diagnosis goes to the doctor that works in the nearest treatment center, neurologist. And the pediatric neurologist calls the family and makes an appointment, and then there is a full assessment of the child in the treatment center. Then we have the final verification just to make sure that there was no mistake and we can corroborate the initial diagnosis of SMA. And during this assessment, we also evaluate the number of SMA2 copies, because based on that number, the therapeutical decisions are made. Based on results that we have so far, it seems that we have 1 per 7,500 child born with SMA. And the screening tests, the first step tests, were showing on average on the 8th day of life, the 3rd day after the registration in our screening database. Because the tissue for the test has to be transported to the lab, and sometimes they cannot be transported immediately. If we have a sample collection, let's say on Thursday night, many times we get the sample on Monday morning because the courier shipment is not able to work and deliver over the weekend. Now, the verification test that is prepared when the treatment center calls the patient. On average, we would get the final verification on the 14th day of life and 9 days after the registration. So again, the difference is that we have 4 days to call the patient for the final verification. And when you look at the map, I think that this map will just have numbers. Now you see the many circles. But as you can tell, most cases are located in the region of Mazowsze, Wielkopolska, and Małopolska. To be honest, we were very surprised. We have not a single newborn from Lublin that would come with the diagnosis. We think that probably parents travel to the neighboring voivodeships. And perhaps some people who are diagnosed in Mazowsze region or Wielkopolska region were migrating from other regions. What I wanted to emphasize is that if you have a prenatal diagnosis, then it happens much faster than in the case where we don't know the history of the family. Because the family that has some genetic history, they run prenatal diagnostic tests, and we know whether the child will be born with the disease or not. Recently, we had 2 cases like that, one from Lower Silesia, another one from Mazowsze. And on the day when the child was born, we collected the sample for the final test. It was sent to our institute for the actual testing, and the test result was available within 48 hours, which means that the procedure of inclusion of the child in the therapy was much faster. Now, one of these children was born in our institute, and the blood was drawn on the day of birth. The result of the test was available next day, and on day 9 of life, the gene therapy was launched. Because the day 9 of life is apparently unknown anywhere else. We are actually waiting for Novartis to confirm if we had the record time of therapy administration. But we would be pleased to find out that we were able to organize that well. So most patients have 2 or 3 copies of the gene, and they are usually treated with the products that are available. There are 2 children that are generic SMA 0 and SMA 1 copy. One of the children unfortunately died. Another one is on nusinersen treatment.
And it's being followed up. We have 15 patients with 4 SM and 2 copies, 3 with 5 copies, and probably 1 child with 6 copies of SMN2 gene. We are verifying this test in abroad because these are really rare cases, and there are 2 such cases in the world, I guess. Now, when it comes to treatment of our screening patients, a vast majority of them, because of the fact that they were diagnosed before September 2022, are treated using nusinersen. 16 are treated with gene therapy. 2 were qualified for the clinical study with risdiplam. And when it comes to time of administration, and these are data that I have from referral centers, on average, the drug is administered on the 19th day of life at the end of week 3. Nusinersen was administered in day 18, gene therapy day 29. But that results from the fact that the ministry said we are launching treatment. But all hospitals and clinics are subject to the public procurement law. So they had to first run tenders for the delivery of drug. And since they are for huge amounts and minimum duration is 15 days, but not all managers of procurement are so liberal about it. So in some cases, it took 30 days. the time will hopefully will change, and the figures will change as well. So risdiplam, in those patients, the treatment was started in day 22.
I tutaj chciałam, żebyście Państwo też
And I wanted you to appreciate the work of the whole team. These are my colleagues who are diagnosing, screening patients, and I am presenting their outcomes. And it's their hard work. It's not work within 8 hours, but they often stay long hours, especially on Tuesday, when instead of 1,000, we have 3,000 tests to run, because there is the weekend, so really tests from the weekend. So really they deserve huge respect and applause. Yes. The results are very optimistic, and it's quite surprising. You showed the regional outcomes. In Lubelskie and Lubuskie, there was no case of a child or a baby diagnosed with SMA. So it's not an omission, but there was not such a child, or parents moved, right? Moved the diagnosis. I think it's about migration, and it's this specificity and its time fluctuations. And during Christmas, we have the most patients, screening patients, like we had 4 or 5 diagnosed patients last time during Christmas. And for a long time, well, we tested 13,000 patients, and we didn't have a single hit. And we were wondering, is the test not working? I was reviewing the whole plate personally to make sure nothing was missed. And then, once we identified patients, it was more or less 1 patient per week. And when at a later stage, we had a lot of patients from a concrete voivodeship, and in other voivodeship we didn't have such cases. And then Wielkopolskie, Małopolskie started having more patients, and maybe soon most cases will be diagnosed in Mazowieckie, and maybe then from Lubelskie. It's just random case, but I wouldn't blame specificity of individual populations. You can't see this. For example, in the case of Kaszuby, we wouldn't expect more SMA there. Since September 2020, we've had all 3 options available, including the 2 which can be delivered from day 1. And do you have any counter indications for gene therapy for children who were diagnosed after September in screening? When it comes to counterindications for gene therapy, I am not a clinicist, so I am going to talk about what I know of. First of all, they need to be 2 or 3 copies of SMN2. The child cannot be older than 3 months. And it's also a matter of functional evaluation. If the evaluation is too low, the child has too low a score on a scale, then in the case of gene therapy, the treatment cannot be started. So I guess we have 2 children who already were symptomatic at the time of diagnosis, and they were administered nusinersen to stop the development of the disease. But according to our drug policy, we don't have the possibility of starting gene therapy. We know that one of these children, for one of these children, the parents are collecting money for gene therapy, but there are also children where functional scales did not allow for the use of gene therapy. The earlier the disease is diagnosed, the bigger the chance for treatment. And you said that actually during pregnancy, in some cases, you can diagnose the disease. So when we have newborn screening, success is bigger. Could we have an even bigger success? Is it possible to have non-invasive diagnostics during pregnancy? Well, non-invasive diagnostics, even in the case of most frequent chromosomal aberrations, requires confirmation by means of invasive method. So that's my answer to this question. And parents tell me that non-invasive prenatal diagnostics is being worked on. In Poland, we don't have such methods, and I guess such studies are still scientific rather than clinical and diagnostic. So what we are offering to families is invasive diagnostics, taking amniotic fluid and doing diagnosis, running SMA diagnosis. So I always appeal to parents who have a diagnosis to approach a genetic clinic and talk to experts about other pregnancies and about planning prenatal diagnostics. So I wanted to point out that even if a non-invasive test is available in the future, just like in the case of chromosomal aberrations, the test will have to be rerun by means of and confirmed by means of invasive method. Professor Agnieszka Stępień, usually when we talk about treatment, we talk about pharmacotherapy. But in the case of SMA, we know it's not just pharmacotherapy, but also there's another form of treatment, which is very important, namely rehabilitation. Please tell us how important it is for small patients, for children, as well as for symptomatic patients. What can help? I think this is the area of medicine which is really important for children and for adults and for all of us, because the movement in itself is like a drug, like a medicine. So people who do not move often have problems with their health because they are not moving. So for sure, all of us should be moving. And physical therapy differs depending on who it applies to. And starting with children who were screened, they are for sure better developed, and they develop really nicely vis-a-vis children who were treated a bit later, who had diagnosis after several months. But even yesterday, we were able to see that some of the children do need support because of certain asymmetries in the functioning. For example, the child moves one hand and the other hand is less active. Sometimes they have a wrong positioning of the head, which has impact on how the child develops, how it sits, which leg it uses, knee, and physical therapy should be started with the first days of life. I work in the Council of Rare Diseases as a physiotherapist, and I try to convince and remind the doctors that when we are talking about diagnostics, we are talking about pharmacological diagnostics, and we are forgetting that different professional groups have their own professional diagnostics. And we too have it for small children, for newborns. We have a different diagnostics for children who are walking, different diagnostics for people who have scoliosis and require support. So we have to test our patients, and depending on what we find, we have to start the right treatment. So I wanted to say that physical therapy should also apply to adult people. And when I compare physiotherapeutic approach in Poland to children and adults, children are well taken care of, and the foundation has been doing a lot of efforts in this regard. SMA has become trendy, probably because there's treatment and newspapers write about it. There are programs on TV, and my students know what SMA is much better than 10 years ago. So this sort of drives support to patients. And unfortunately, I also see that in teenage age and in adults, the motivation to do physical therapy is reduced. There are many different reasons. I'm happy to elaborate on that. But I just wanted to tell you not to resign, because if you are getting treatment, there's a chance that things will improve in your body. And the drug may cause that you speak louder, breathe better. But if you add a good training on top of that, you can really generate activities that will be very important in your life, in your daily functioning, in professional work. I think most people would like to have physical therapy, but there's a problem with that. So how do you see that? What should change? What should rehabilitation look like? Well, thank you so much for saying that I'm a professor, but I don't feel comfortable with that. I received this title 2 days ago, and I haven't yet gotten used to it. Yes, I know from Dorota that you are a habilitated PhD. That's why I'm addressing you professor. Thank you. It's really incredible for me. And I just wanted to say that we have a lot of work in the community. We have pediatric physical therapists, and thanks to the foundation and thanks to Biogen, which organized physiotherapeutic workshops in Poland, we have a group of people, more than 200 people, who completed such training and who can cope with children really well.
I think that we have a lot to do for when it comes to adults, and I'm repeating the same message at each conference. I'm looking for helpers. If we need to actually organize some action for adults, I think that we need to support them. This is what we should do over the next few years. But look, in practical terms, if you have an interested adult who would like to be rehabilitated, what is the likelihood that she or he gets the ongoing support? Well, this is very negligible chance. For children, when I ask parents how often can you use physiotherapy, they say twice or 3 times a week. This is reimbursed. So it's either in the preschool or in the physiotherapy centers that are paid by insurance. And on top of it, parents are trying to find someone who would also work with the child on a commercial basis. For adults, it is very difficult. There are no specialized centers. I think that adults are kind of lost. They don't know where they should go, where they should report to. And people, like the personnel who works in the adult centers, do not have much experience in working with adult SMA patients. And physiotherapists often approach me during training programs, and they say, look, but we are afraid. We don't know what we should do, what is safe, how to approach such a patient, and where to start with. Perhaps the next idea is to actually educate a group of people who would be able to support adults in different parts of Poland. We can do it. We can have webinars, training, online options are also available. But access to good physiotherapy for adults is very, very limited. Thank you. So this is a huge need and a huge challenge. Now my question goes to Dorota Raczek. What Professor said is certainly a great challenge for all of us, but let me ask about what we have today. So how the situation has changed for the SMA patients, like the fact that we have the screening program, and how the independence of the adult patients has changed. Well, for a few years, we've been talking about things that have changed and we see the changes from year to year. Actually, things improve from year to year. And from yesterday, I've been walking around very proud because everyone was praising the foundation. So we are really happy that we could contribute. Obviously, pharmacological treatment is necessary. Access to care is necessary. It's all important. Training is important. Support is also important. And as the foundation, we are trying to bridge the gaps in the system. The system is not able to cover or to meet all the needs. And I understand that there is many years of work for us. Now, if you ask me about the quality of life, during the first conferences after the launch of the drug program, I've heard that, oh, I can open the bottle myself. I'm speaking about adults because for children, the outcomes are so spectacular. You know, yesterday we had a Kinderball and they were running. You will see that on the films and pictures how children are able to fare. But teenagers and adults or children who were actually enrolled into the treatment after the symptoms were developed, then I heard the comments like, I can open my bottle, I can operate the mouse, I can sit for a longer time, I can travel. I can stay home alone as an adult because please remember that our patients often needed 24-hour support. I can turn on my back in my bed. I don't need my mom, my dad, my assistant, or my partner to help me out. So perhaps these things are not measurable, and it's hard really to measure it on the scale. Sometimes it's just a score of 1 or 2, but it is happening, and I see hope. When I was here for the first time in 2017, we had like 1,000 people in this hotel. I don't know how we were able to fit in, but we had like 1,000 people. We were crying because we knew that the molecule is out there and the molecule could really stop the progression of the disease. And we were so hopeful and so determined. I think that there is like another gene that determines our actions. People that have SMA and their caregivers, we are very determined and very much goal-oriented. We are brave, and I think that because of that, and because we met back in 2017, we showed the world how many of us are here. And in 2018, we continued. We had another weekend with SMA, and we were showing the first outcomes, the treatment that was offered abroad. Some people actually left for Belgium to get treatment as adults. So because all of these things in 2019, we had the first therapy in end of March 2022. All children are screened for SMA in September. new therapies, and we are looking forward to new molecules becoming approved. So we are not sitting on the laurels. We are looking forward to the new molecules and new opportunities. But let's remember that pharmacotherapy is not everything that you need. We need to work with physiotherapists, because without physiotherapy, this is not as effective as it could be, or it's not as effective as we would expect. As Agnieszka mentioned, Professor Agnieszka mentioned, it is much more difficult for adults to access the system, and the parents are getting older. So the situation is really changing after you become 18 years of age. You go to different treatment centers or medical centers, suddenly you are treated as an adult. And this is also a challenge, because we have 36 centers, 18 for children, 18 for adults. But there are some spots in Poland where they don't have access, and patients have to travel long distance. Many times, parents are either gone, meaning that they passed away, or they are aging and they are not able to help much. And with children, we have many times rehabilitation 5 times a week. So parents do it all, but for adults, they need to sort of take on this responsibility. And many times it is difficult because of the financial constraints and because of other constraints. As Agnieszka said, there are fairly few physiotherapists that know how to work with adult patients with SMA. We organize training for them. We want to make sure that we have the same number of therapists that can work with adults as the therapists that work with children. But we see, the map is getting filled because we will organize the next cycle of training and yet another one. And after each cycle, we will have 30 additional therapists trained. But we know that this is a challenge. Our children are growing, and there will be more patients with SMA. We have treatments available. Patients are doing better, and they are well educated, and they are functioning very well. Many times they are considered to be quite exceptional when it comes to IQ. Yes, you mentioned the gene of determination and courage, and I would like to congratulate you of all the accomplishments of the foundation. And you address the challenges. One is the physiotherapy for adults. What else do you see on the radar? We know that there is a huge need for coordinated care. Why is it so important? And then a plan for rare diseases. It already exists. Perhaps it should be improved or better implemented. Well, we are hoping that there would be the system-based solutions available. As the foundation, we are trying to bridge the gaps, but we do have hopes when it comes to the rare disease program. There are some things that may really help SMA patients live a better life. We are looking forward to the reference centers. We are looking forward to the patient's passport. And within the framework of the drug program, we have the pre-seed of the coordinated care. The patient gets to the system. The patient is assessed every few months. If you are on nusinersen treatment, every 4 months you have to go for the inpatient tests. We have consultations. We understand that this is just the beginning of the journey. But many times the caregiver acts as a coordinator for the patient's care. Later the patient comes of age and the adult patient knows where to go. As the foundation, we are trying to raise awareness because SMA affects many organs, and obviously neurologist is your main doctor who's managing your disease and prescribes the therapy, but nevertheless, we need to have consultations with cardiologists, orthopedists, genetics. The whole family has to be covered with a, I should say, diagnosis process. So in each treatment center, we should have such coordinated care. Right. Unless we have reference centers, and it is said that 6 or 7 should be set up for SMA patients, and the patient would go to the reference center once a year for like the very thorough health check. It would be once per year. So there must be something done to facilitate access, because we also have adult patients that are bedridden, and these are the reference centers that are supposed to emerge. But on top of it, we still need to add some treatment centers. There is a region of Mazury that doesn't have such a center for adults. Białystok, northeastern Poland, doesn't have their center, and we do have children in the region that are treated for SMA. So there are still some blank spots on the map that have to be filled. So many challenges. We will have to bring this discussion to the close, and hopefully we'll be able to screen the film. But Agnieszka, let me ask you about the dreams. I have a dream to develop a standard or guidelines that would be applicable in all centers in Poland. I'm speaking about the physiotherapy. And another dream that I have is to have the proper collaboration with the physicians. I want to have the standard that is developed for patients that are prior to surgery and after the surgery. I know that professors, orthopedists are actually interested in that. They want to establish such collaboration. So these are my dreams. Dorota, what about your dreams? Well, to have such treatments that you can treat patients effectively. Well, we see that there is a screening and everything works fine. I have a child who's nearly 16 years old. I want her to be happy. So I want her to be able to have a full life, to live a full life. And when it comes to collaboration, I have to say that on Wednesday we had a meeting and we set up the Scientific Council of SMA that was to celebrate the 10 years of SMA Foundation in Poland, and together with professors. Okay, we will disclose the names soon. We will be working with professors of medicine, and hopefully this collaboration should bring new outcomes for the next decade.
And your dream, madam? Well, my dream as a genetic expert is a good plan for rare diseases, not only for patients with SMA, but in general for patients suffering from genetic diseases. It's really important. Maybe in the future, what could extend the screening of newborns, not only with basic diseases, but with other genetic diseases. We have a plan for this year. We will be testing modifiers of phenotype, SMA phenotype, and apart from standard screening, evaluation of number of copies and SMN2 gene, it's important to test for modifiers. And this year we have statutory study in which we are going to test modifiers. Thank you. Does anyone want to ask a question to experts? Yes. I have a question to Dr. Goss. We know that screening tests can detect 95% of cases of SMA patients. What about the rest, 5%, the remaining 5%? So 3 or 4 children with SMA may not be detected out of 100. Is it possible to improve the test statistics? As the name suggests, screening is not a diagnostic test. So when we start screening tests, we agree that 1 patient a year, because this is the amount for Poland, will be missed. Maybe we could implement more sensitive methods, but honestly speaking, we have 1 per 34 people carrying SMA gene, so it's ethical whether we can test it in teenagers. And the other thing is, looking at diagnostics and methodology, so I can't imagine sequencing SMN1 gene in every person. So this applies to all diseases that are subject to screening. We simply agree with that individual cases will not be diagnosed. So what we are trying to offer is to accelerate diagnostics of symptomatic patients. And we, as the Institute of Mother and Child, if we have a question about a child who might have SMA and the screening is positive, we do this test for them under our contract for the provision of genetic tests, so that these centers do not have to look for money to run the test. So what we are offering is that if there is a symptomatic patient, we want to carry out the test as soon as possible using quantitative method. Anyone else wishing to ask a question? If no, thank you so much. And now we will see the video.
Dzisiaj mamy przyjemność porozmawiać z Laurentem Servet. Laurent jest profesorem specjalizującym się w dziecięcych chorobach
Today we are talking to Laurent Servet.
chorób nerwowo-mięśniowych oraz profesorem
He is a professor at the university in Liège. The most important fact is that he is a global class SMA expert. We managed to talk to him on the run. So, by way of introduction, in Poland we had a complete revolution in the area of SMA. Right now we have screening for SMA and access to 3 therapies. That's why our appetite keeps growing. And I wanted to hear from you, what do you think about what's the future? Let's start with additional therapies that are worked on. What do you think of those therapies?
Uważam, że całkiem dobrze podsumowałeś sytuację. Żyjemy w fantastycznych czasach. Przeszliśmy z sytuacji, gdzie nie było leczenia, do sytuacji, gdzie mamy 3 dostępne terapie i badanie przesiewowe. Jednakże ciągle są obszary, które wymagają poprawy. Są pacjenci, którzy zostali włączeni do leczenia po pojawieniu się objawów, ze względu na to, że urodzili się przed wprowadzeniem przesiewu lub też urodzili się z objawami. A wiemy, że około 40% dzieci, które urodziły się z 2 kopiami genu SMN2, ma objawy po urodzeniu. Oczywiście włączenie leczenia stanowczo poprawia sytuację tych dzieci, lecz pewna niepełnosprawność będzie im towarzyszyć. Musimy przesunąć granice tego, co jest możliwe i znaleźć sposób, jak poprawić obecną sytuację. Mamy 2 strategie. Jedna to dodać terapię, zmienić terapię. Możemy pacjentom na nusinersenie dać zolgensmę, możemy pacjentom na zolgensmie dać risdiplam lub pacjentom na risdiplamie dać nusinersem. W zasadzie nie obserwowaliśmy dużych zmian w rezultatach i nie ma przekonujących dowodów o skuteczności takich strategii. Jedyną opcją jest prawdopodobnie użycie innych struktur. Zatem zamiast oddziaływać na poziom białka SMN, możemy użyć innych struktur. I tą strukturą mogą być mięśnie. W rdzeniowym zaniku mięśni mamy zanik mięśni. 2 słowa z 3. Zatem pytaniem jest, jak możemy odwrócić ten zanik mięśni. Mamy dzisiaj 3 leki w próbach klinicznych, które mają za zadanie odwrócić zanik mięśni u pacjentów, którzy są obecnie leczeni. Mamy okazję sprawdzić, czy ten sposób leczenia działa, ponieważ obecnie nie wiemy, czy ta strategia działa. Może działa, może nie działa. Istotnym jest, aby sprawdzić te leki w ramach dobrze zaprojektowanych prób klinicznych, aby stwierdzić, czy te leki pomagają, czy też nie. Dziękuję za odpowiedź. Jakie terapie będą dostępne?
What sort of therapies will be available in 5 to 10 years?
Oczywiście widzimy wiele badań klinicznych.
Of course, we can see a lot of clinical studies right now, but what are your thoughts about the best possible therapies or combination therapies in the next 5, 10 years?
Coraz wcześniejsze leczenie może zdecydowanie pomóc zachować jak największą liczbę motoneuronów. Zatem przyspieszenie leczenia, ponieważ każdy dzień zwłoki oznacza że SMA wygrywa, jest kluczowe. Dla pozostałych pacjentów, którzy mają objawy pomimo wczesnego leczenia, włączenie 1 lub 2 leków opartych na miostatynie lub też włączenie jeszcze innych leków, które na przykład zabezpieczają aksony albo wspomagają komunikację między neuronami, może być zasadne. Ale wszystkie te leki będą musiały być sprawdzone w ramach prób klinicznych. Jestem przekonany, że za 5 lat wszystkie dzieci w Europie będą miały wykonany przesiew, ale wykonanie badań przesiewowych jest niewystarczające. Musimy wypracować rozwiązanie, w którym dzieci leczone są jak najszybciej, najlepiej w przeciągu pierwszych 10 dni od urodzenia. Dla dzieci, które mają 2 kopie genu SMN2 i mogą mieć objawy SMA, musimy znaleźć rozwiązania oparte o nowe generacje leków, które dopiero są rozwijane. Te leki powinny wspomóc proces leczenia u pacjentów symptomatycznych. Nie możemy również zapomnieć o opcjach nieopartych na lekach. Widzieliśmy bardzo interesujące dane dla symulacji rdzeniowej. Mamy również egzoszkielety dla osób, które nie mogą dzisiaj chodzić. Zatem rozwiązania farmaceutyczne są bardzo istotne, ale musimy pamiętać, że są również inne techniki. Dziękuję.
And thank you. Finally, let us dream together. What sort of treatment will be available in the next 10 years?
Najlepszym rozwiązaniem będzie tworzenie nowych motoneuronów albo generowanie lub tworzenie komórek, które mogą zostać motoneuronami. Chodzi nie tylko o to, aby stworzyć motoneurony, ale również umieścić je we właściwych miejscach, zmusić je do wykonywania właściwych zadań i połączeń. To jest marzenie. Nie sądzę, że to będzie możliwe za mniej niż 15 lat. Ale jeżeli chcemy pomarzyć razem o tym, co może być fantastycznym rozwiązaniem dla pacjentów, to właśnie to rozwiązanie. Niestety nie jesteśmy jeszcze blisko. Bardzo dziękuję za odpowiedzi.
And thank you so much for your answers and for finding time for us.
Cała przyjemność po mojej stronie.
Thank you so much for this very optimistic video. And yes, we need to shift the borders of what's possible, the limits of what's possible in medicine, especially if you have such foundations as SMA Foundation with a gene of courage and determination, and with such experts who are very much engaged. So thank you for today's debate. Thank you to the experts, and I hope that in a year or two, the innovative pharmacological methods as well as exoskeletons will be
already available in Poland. So thank you so much for this debate. Thank you so much, Madam. Thank you to our speakers. And now we will have a lunch. And after lunch break, we will break into 4 rooms and we will have workshops.